Chapter 1726. Feng Run City, the City Lord's Mansion. After listening to Lan Rong's detailed report, Yu Haoran, who was sitting on the armchair in the study of the City Lord's Mansion, frowned slightly. Originally, according to his initial expectations, the Great Han Empire, which had suffered 5 consecutive losses, would definitely gather millions of elite soldiers in a short period of time and retake Feng Run City at all costs. Whether it was to eliminate the hidden threat behind the empire or to obtain the 9 mythical beast corpses hidden in the mythical Beast Mountain. This was also the main reason why he was in a hurry to return to Feng Run City. However, according to the informants that Lan Rong had arranged, the Great Han Empire had indeed gathered more than 5 million elite soldiers recently. Moreover, it was the emperor himself who led the expedition. However, the goal of the expedition was not Feng Run City, but the more powerful central region. For the Ministry of War and the imperial family of the Great Han Empire to neglect the hidden threat behind and temporarily give up the 9 mythical beast corpses, something must have happened in the Tianxian continent during this period of time. Prince Consort, shouldn't we contact His Majesty? As someone who had been on the battlefield for decades, Lan Rong instinctively thought that the Great Han Empire's sudden change in the goal of the expedition was most likely related to the Great Emperor Qin Empire's plan to conquer the central region. Therefore, after thinking about it, he could not help but take the initiative to remind Lan Rong. Lan Rong's reminder made Yu Haoran immediately realize the connection between the two matters. He quickly took out a top-notch communication jade talisman and recorded his doubts in detail. Then, he sent it to Qin Lingfei, who was far away in the prince's mansion in Xianying City. At the same time, considering that Qin Lingfei was not at the front line of the expedition and did not know much about the situation of the army, he took out another top-notch communication jade talisman and sent it to Meng Zhengkai, who was once again on the battlefield. After that, Yu Haoran closed his eyes and began to wait. He was waiting for Qin Lingfei and Meng Zhengkai's replies. Fortunately, the top-notch communication jade talisman was very fast. In just 5 minutes, he received Qin Lingfei's reply. After reading the contents of Qin Lingfei's reply, Yu Haoran's expression suddenly shook as he cried out involuntarily, "Peak 9th grade Martial Revered Realm." Hearing Yu Haoran's exclamation, Lan Rong, Han Guangbei, and the others who were waiting in the study revealed a trace of doubt in their eyes. They glanced at each other, but no one dared to take the initiative to ask. Although Yu Haoran also noticed the eye contact between Lan Rong and the others, he had no intention of explaining. After closing his eyes again, he waited for Meng Zhengkai's reply while thinking about the changes in Emperor Qin's body. Qin Lingfei's reply was very simple. She said that Emperor Qin's expedition to the central region was very smooth. Moreover, Emperor Qin, who personally led the expedition, had successfully advanced to the peak of the 9th level of the Exalted Realm. It was because of this that he was extremely shocked. Previously, when they were debating whether the expedition's target was the East region or the Central region, Emperor Qin's cultivation had only just broken through to the early 2nd level of the Martial Revered Realm by using the high-quality soul fire that he had given him. Now, only half a month had passed since the debate. With Emperor Qin's talent and accumulation, it was very difficult for him to raise his cultivation by 1 small level, let alone break through 7 small levels consecutively to reach the peak of the 9th level of the Martial Revered Realm. Just as Yu Haoran was wondering why Emperor Qin's cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds, the communication jade talisman in his hand, which was used to contact Meng Zhengkai, suddenly vibrated violently. This forced him to temporarily suppress his doubts and use his mind to read the message in the communication jade talisman. Luck. According to the message that Meng Zhengkai had left in the communication jade talisman, Emperor Qin's cultivation had directly advanced to the peak of the 9th level of the Martial Revered Realm in just half a month. The reason was that the Northern Expedition Army had been conquering hundreds of cities and sections. In a short period of time, they had gathered a large amount of destiny from the central region. The Qin Emperor had relied on the support of this huge amount of destiny to finally achieve a rapid improvement in his cultivation. Although Meng Zhengkai's explanation seemed reasonable, Yu Haoran knew that this situation was absolutely abnormal. First of all, there was an abundance of spiritual qi of heaven and earth, rich cultivation resources, and complete martial arts inheritance. The cruel competition environment made the inherited families and sects in the central region not only very strong, but also fierce and combative. It was very difficult for them to voluntarily surrender. Secondly, although the army of the Great Qin Empire in this expedition to the central region was said to have over 10 million elite soldiers, in reality, more than half of the elite soldiers were only new recruits at the martial warrior and martial master realm. The cultivation, strength, knowledge, and courage of these new soldiers were not of much use and would even slow down the army's progress. In other words, in just half a month, with the strength and speed of the expedition to the north, it was impossible for them to conquer hundreds of cities and sections. Lastly, and most importantly, the luck that could be gathered from hundreds of cities and sects could not be compared to the huge amount of luck that had been gathered from the entire southern region. With the huge amount of luck that had gathered from the entire southern region, and with the help of a large number of top-notch elixirs, Emperor Qin had finally broken through to the ordinary martial revered realm. Then, how could the luck that was far inferior to the entire southern region allow Emperor Qin to break through the bottleneck of 7 small realms and reach the peak of 9th grade martial revered realm in one go? When he thought up to here, Yu Haoran instantly had a strong feeling that someone was secretly manipulating the Great Qin Empire's northern expedition plan and process, and that someone was secretly providing countless unimaginable assistance. Even the sudden change in the Great Han Empire's target could very well be directly related to that person or that force. Thinking that Emperor Qin might have secretly reached an agreement with a force with ulterior motives or be secretly controlled by someone, he immediately wanted to return to Xianyang City and then go to the expedition to the north to understand the situation. Compared to opening up the rear for future refuge, Emperor Qin's safety and the survival of tens of millions of elite soldiers were more important. Therefore, Yu Haoran suddenly stood up and ordered Lan Rong, "General Lan, I'll be leaving Fengrun City for a period of time. Your mission is to defend Fengrun City, and then use the special environment of Qinghu Mountain Range and the cultivation resources that I left behind to increase your own strength and the army's strength." Originally, the Great Han Empire had transferred 5 million elite soldiers to the central region, which would definitely cause the defense at the rear to be weakened. It was a good opportunity for them to expand their territory. However, due to the influence of the top powerhouses of the left army, without the protection of himself and the Scarlet Loathe, and without the protection of the defensive formation of the sun, moon, and stars, a rash expedition could very well lead to the danger of being completely annihilated. After all, the strongest people in the left army, Lan Rong and Qian Guangbei, were only at the peak of 9th grade martial saint. He could only temporarily give up this golden opportunity. Chapter 17:27. After leaving the study in a flash, Yu Haoran called out to Palace, who was sitting cross-legged on the fake mountain. Then, he grabbed Xiang Yuling's arm and soared into the sky, heading straight for the Qinghu Mountain Range. Due to the fact that the distance between the east and west of the Qinghu Mountain Range had far exceeded the distance that could be covered by the void-tearing mystic technique, in order to avoid any accidents that might delay his journey in time, he could only temporarily use the assistance of the law of speed and speed to fly towards the southern region. After spending close to 20 minutes, he finally crossed the entire Qinghu Mountain Range. Then, using the method of tearing the void, it took him another 5 minutes to return to the prince's mansion. After introducing Xiang Yuling's background and identity to Qin Lingfei and the sword without trace in detail, and instructing Palace to wait in the prince's mansion, Yu Haoran headed straight for the backyard of the imperial city. "Greetings, Prince Consort." Seeing Yu Haoran descend from the sky, the beautiful palace maids of the Palace of Compassionate and Peaceful immediately knelt down to greet him. However, there was confusion in their eyes. Yu Haoran's attitude towards the Empress Dowager had always been lukewarm due to his relationship with Qin Bojun of the imperial clan court. In the past year since his marriage with the princess, he had never taken the initiative to greet the Empress Dowager, let alone take the initiative to greet her. Is the Empress Dowager here? Yu Haoran asked indifferently after gesturing for the beautiful palace maids to rise. In reply to Prince Consort, the Empress Dowager is cultivating in seclusion in the Purple Fate Pavilion. The leading palace maid replied. Cultivating in seclusion. After hearing the leading palace maid's reply, Yu Haoran couldn't help but furrow his brows. The reason why he hadn't rushed to the central region was because he needed to understand the various actions of the Northern Expedition Army in detail after the start of the war. He also needed to find out if there were any strange clues. According to the military disciplines set by the founding Emperor Qin Empire, the empire had to leave behind 2 very detailed and complete records for every expedition. Firstly, it was convenient to calculate the rewards and punishments of the elite generals. Secondly, they could make use of the lessons learned from their successes and failures. Thirdly, it was an important teaching material that the Ministry of War and the imperial family used to teach their descendants. There were 2 complete records, one of which was kept in the Master Guardian Hall of the Ministry of War, and the other was kept in the Sutra Depository of the Imperial Palace. Regardless of whether it was the Teacher Guarding Hall of the Ministry of War or the Sutra Depository of the Imperial Palace, one would need the Emperor Qin's Imperial Edict or the Phoenix Ceremonial Token of the Empress Dowager Zixian to enter. Emperor Qin was currently in the Northern Punitive Expedition in the Central Region, so he could only come to Empress Dowager Zixian to ask for the Phoenix Ceremonial Token. Otherwise, with his attitude of disliking Zixian, how could he take the initiative to visit her? Emperor's son-in-law, before the Empress Dowager went into seclusion, she left a message that she would be in seclusion for a month. Everyone in Xianyang City knew about Yu Haoran's audacious character. Therefore, after seeing his frown, the leading palace maid became nervous. Now, there are less than 3 days before the Empress Dowager comes out of seclusion. It's too long. Not to mention 3 days. Even if it was 3 hours, he couldn't afford to waste any more time. Therefore, after complaining a little impatiently, Yu Haoran directly mobilized Emperor Wu's peak level 5 divine thought to force his way into the Purple Fate Pavilion. Suddenly, the door of the Purple Fate Pavilion opened. Then, Zixian, who looked like a young girl, walked out of the Purple Fate Pavilion with a radiant expression. When he saw Zixian walk out of the Purple Fate Pavilion and her cultivation had reached the peak level 5 martial honorable realm, Yu Haoran couldn't help but be surprised. Who is it? Yu Haoran's surprised voice immediately alarmed Zixian, who had just reached the peak level 5 martial honorable realm. After questioning him with a fierce look, she immediately used her divine thought to track the source of the surprised voice. Emperor's son-in-law, why have you come to my palace of peace and tranquility? After seeing Yu Haoran appear in the palace of compassionate and peaceful, Zixian was very surprised. At the same time, she appeared in front of him in a flash and asked with a puzzled look in her eyes. Half a month ago, you were just an ordinary peak level 1 martial honorable realm. Now, you have reached the peak level 5 martial honorable realm. Ignoring Zixian's questioning, Yu Haoran frowned and asked, "Tell me immediately, what kind of heaven-defying opportunity did you get during this period of time?" Yu Haoran, don't you think that your request just now was too much? Wanting to know the reason why her cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds recently, Zixian, who was originally gentle, immediately asked with a gloomy face. "I'm sorry, I was too abrupt," Zixian asked sternly. Yu Haoran immediately realized his rashness just now and quickly lowered his head to apologize. Forget it. For the arrogant and disrespectful Yu Haoran to take the initiative to apologize, the anger and dissatisfaction in Zixian's heart immediately subsided. Her expression gradually relaxed as she waved her hand to indicate that it was fine. "Empress Dowager, I need to enter the Mastergar Hall of the Ministry of War to look at some very important information, so I need to borrow your Phoenix ritual token for now." Zixian's cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds in such a short period of time, which further confirmed Yu Haoran's guess. This made him even more worried about the safety of Emperor Qin and the Northern Expedition Army. At the same time, with the accumulated conflicts and grievances between him and Xian, wanting to find clues from her was undoubtedly more difficult than ascending to the heavens. As such, Yu Haoran could not be bothered to continue asking about the heaven-defying opportunity she had obtained and directly stated the reason why he had appeared in the palace of Compassionate and Peaceful. Hearing Yu Haoran ask for the Phoenix ritual token that would allow him to freely enter the Ministry of War and the forbidden area of the Imperial Palace, Xian could not help but frown. This was completely against the laws of the Great Qin Empire. However, when she thought of Yu Haoran's lawless personality, she knew that if she did not give him the Phoenix ritual token, it would definitely infuriate him. With Yu Haoran's powerful strength, if he forcefully entered the Master Guard Hall of the Ministry of War, no one in Xianyang City would be able to stop him. At the same time, it would also intensify the conflict between them, which was not beneficial to the ongoing Northern Expedition Army. As such, even if she was unwilling to agree to his request, for the sake of the peace of the imperial family, Xian still took out a token with a divine phoenix carved on it from her sleeve. Many thanks. After taking the token from Xian, Yu Haoran cupped his hands in thanks and soared into the air, heading straight for the Ministry of War. Yu Haoran's attitude of rushing to the Ministry of War immediately aroused Xian's suspicions, following which, when she thought of how he had questioned her about the reason for her sudden increase in cultivation, her expression could not help but change. This is bad. Yu Haoran might have discovered Ishan's plan. Chapter 1728. Xianyang City, Master Hall of the Ministry of War. After putting down the military book that recorded the marching records of the Northern Expedition Army, Yu Haoran's right hand tapped on the table as he slowly closed his eyes and fell into deep thought. According to the military book, ever since the Northern Expedition Army crossed Zhuangnyo City of Shuangnyo Mountain and officially stepped into the territory of the Central Region, regardless of whether it was the inherited families or third-rate sects, they either took the initiative to open the door and surrender or suddenly had an intense internal strife. In short, the Northern Expedition Army's campaign was not only very smooth, but the price they paid could be said to be very small. The three elders of the He clan worked together to kill the clan leader and personally led 1317 direct descendants to open the door and surrender. The sudden internal strife of the Ma clan caused the defense of Wen City to be non-existent. General Meng led 300,000 elite troops to easily take down the city. The head of the Blood Palm sect mysteriously disappeared. For the sake of fighting for the position of the head of the sect's defense power was weakened by 70%. His Majesty personally led the army to slaughter them. Yu Haoran opened his eyes and took a look at the process and results of the Northern Expedition Army siege. His right hand that was tapping on the table suddenly stopped as he softly muttered to himself. The Green Hill Fox Clan. When participating in the Hidden Dragon ranking battle in the southern region, by killing the manipulated Qin Tianyi, the mastermind behind the scenes, the Green Hill Sanus and the Fox Clan's ancestor Su Wanru were forced to come out, thus exposing the Green Hill Fox Clan's secret plans and conspiracies. The inherited families and sects that the Northern Expedition Army encountered during the campaign, their strange behavior was very similar to Qin Tianyi, who was manipulated. In other words, the force that secretly assisted Emperor Qin's campaign in the central region was very likely the Green Hill Fox Clan of the Green Hill Mountain Range. Thinking of this, his right hand that had stopped tapping on the table started tapping again. A trace of doubt appeared in his originally clear eyes, because Emperor Qin was different from Qin Tianyi. First of all, as the emperor of the great Emperor Qin Kingdom, with the protection of the country's fate and destiny, it was very difficult for the Emperor Qin to be controlled by others. Secondly, without being able to control minds, Emperor Qin's towering hatred towards the Green Hill Foxes made it impossible for him to form an alliance and fight alongside them. Finally, if Emperor Qin had temporarily set aside the vengeance in his heart due to his own ambitions and chose to work with the Green Hill Foxes, therefore, With the cunning and cautious nature of the Green Hill Foxes, they would definitely be wary of Emperor Qin's ambition and vengeance, and would not fully assist him in improving his cultivation and ability. That was unless there were other factions besides the Green Hill Foxes who had intervened in the northern expedition. Zhou clan. When he thought of other forces interfering, a figure flashed in Yu Haoran's mind. His expression suddenly changed, and he stood up abruptly. In the southern region's demon-sealing mystic realm, the reason why the ancient demon clan was able to break the seal ahead of time was largely due to the help of Zhou Yu's and his family's experts and formation masters. Moreover, he believed that with Zhou Yu's methods, even if he could not form an alliance with the ancient demon clan in the end, he would still have the means to protect himself and safely leave the demon-sealing mystic realm. When he thought of how he and the four great guardian clans had resealed the ancient demon and god clans, causing the Zhou clan to lose two powerful allies in succession. When he thought of Zhou Yu's personality and madness, it was not impossible for him to join forces with a sinister and cunning faction like the Green Hill Foxes. At the same time, with the combination of the immortal ending sword, immortal trapping sword, and the three ocean-suppressing pearls, the Zhou clan's foundation in collecting treasures did not lose to the four great guardian clans in the slightest. In that case, it made sense for them to be able to use the conditions for Emperor Qin to temporarily set aside his vengeance and choose to form a temporary alliance with the Green Hill Foxes. With a true suspect in his heart, Yu Haoran once again flipped through the records in the military manual, further confirming his conjecture. Closing the thick military manual, he rose and left the great guardian hall of the Ministry of Military Personnel, taking to the skies to return to the prince's mansion. However, he did not alert anyone in the mansion, and instead quietly returned to his training room. Pagoda Spirit. What grade is the soul-severing banner? What kind of powerful effects does it possess? And what does it mean for the Green Hill Foxes? Sitting cross-legged in the training room, Yu Haoran took out the palm-sized soul-severing banner from the victor and pursued the question in a single breath. The reason why the Green Hill Foxes were feared by countless factions was not only because of the powerful attacks of their tails, but also because of their terrifying ability to control the minds of living beings. Perhaps the Green Hill Foxes could not control Emperor Qin's mind due to his identity as the emperor and the protection of the nation's fortune, but it was hard to say for the commanders and generals of the Northern Expedition Army. Therefore, before the Northern Expedition Army dealt with the Green Hill Foxes, he had to think of a way to eliminate the hidden dangers of the Green Hill Foxes' mind control. The soul-severing banner is a peak-level godly artifact that the Green Hill Foxes used to bewitch the last ruler of the Shang dynasty. Gathering the strength of the entire Shang dynasty, using the flesh and souls of 9 peak 9th grade martial gods as the foundation, and the corpses of 9 peak 9th grade martial gods as the foundation, it took 99 years to refine. Its might is comparable to a peak natural spirit treasure. Knowing the reason why Yu Haoran asked about the soul-severing banner, as well as the importance of the soul-severing banner to his next operation, Fowling explained the soul-severing banner in detail without hiding anything. The core formation within the soul-severing banner is called the soul-devouring formation. It's a peak-level, godly formation that can forcibly extract the 3 immortal and 7 mortal souls of living beings and slay the opponent's soul from a distance. At the same time, since the banner is refined from the corpses of soul-devouring beasts, it can devour souls that have left the physical body and convert them into the purest soul energy. Not only can it raise the Green Hill Foxes' realm in strength, it can also aid the Green Hill Foxes in mind control. After hearing Fowling's detailed explanation of the soul-severing banner, Yu Haoran finally understood why the Green Hill Foxes were bent on reclaiming the soul-severing banner despite his shock. For that reason, even Su Wanru, a third tribulation demigod, had risked descending with his clone to reclaim the soul-severing banner. Fowling, is it possible to use the soul-severing banner to break the Green Hill Fox's mind control technique? Since the soul-severing banner was so important to the Green Hill Foxes, what Yu Haoran wanted to know the most at the moment was whether the soul-severing banner's ability could be used to restrain the Green Hill Foxes. Yes, as he nodded in confirmation, Thowling further explained the reason for the restraint. To put it bluntly, the Green Hill Foxes' method of mind control is a secret technique passed down in their bloodline that utilizes the spirit. Since it's a secret technique that utilizes the spirit, a shred of the target's soul energy would remain in the consciousness of the controlled being. Chapter 1729. Schwania Mountain, Rhydock City. Howren looked at the shop of the Heavenly World Chamber of Commerce in Rhydock City. Not only was it still in operation, but it was also not affected by the internal strife of the Chamber of Commerce. At the same time, he could not help but admire Shen Jinwen, who was in charge of the business. After all, with the death of President Wu Siqing, the departure of First Elder Bian Xingrui, and the death of more than 10 elders, the entire Heavenly World Chamber of Commerce was basically on the verge of bankruptcy and collapse. It could be said that it existed in name only. The branches in the central, eastern, and western regions have been forcefully annexed by the other two chambers of commerce. Even the branch in Guangling City in the southern region, as well as the shops in the various cities, have been secretly controlled by some powerful local families and the city lord's mansion, changing their owners. After recovering his emotions, Howren turned his head and instructed Siki and Palace, "Sister, Brother Qi, let's first rest and reorganize in the Yuan Pavilion in the side courtyard of the shop before heading to the encampment of the Northern Expedition Army." Considering that among the forces secretly assisting and manipulating the Northern Expedition Army, other than the Green Hill Fox clan that was adept at bewitching people, there was also the Zhou clan that had a deep foundation. He was worried that he and Palace might lose sight of one and make mistakes. At the same time, Siki, who had cultivated the mantra of Great Oblivion, not only did her combat strength not lose to Palace, but her Oblivion state was also able to restrain the Green Hill Fox clan's bewitching secret technique. Therefore, when he left the prince's mansion, he had specially invited his sister to follow him. Siki and Palace were only interested in the battle. As for when and where to rest, they had no opinion. Therefore, after nodding in agreement to Howren's suggestion, they followed him to the shop a few dozen meters away. "Greetings, Prince Consort." The waiter, who was busy greeting customers, immediately ran to greet Howren when he saw him walk into the shop, his eyes filled with surprise. This waiter was Lin Hua, who had served him when he first came to the shop. Not bad, seeing that Lin Hua's cultivation had already advanced to the Martial King realm. Howren nodded his head in praise and asked with a smile, "Lin Hua, where is shopkeeper Shun?" In response to the prince's son-in-law, shopkeeper Shun is currently entertaining a few esteemed guests in Tianyuan Pavilion and is unable to see you for the time being. When he heard Howren ask about Shen Jinwen, the smile on Lin Hua's face quickly disappeared. He quietly observed the 5 customers in the hall with the corner of his eyes and replied with a smile again. However, Howren could hear that when he mentioned the guests, his tone was slightly heavier. A thought flashed through Howren's mind when he glanced at the 5 customers who were choosing their goods and discovered that they were all experts at the peak of the 9th grade martial saint realm. After that, he immediately mobilized Emperor Wu's divine telekinesis, which was at the peak of rank 5, and scanned the entire backyard of the shop. He immediately discovered the few distinguished guests that Lin Hua had mentioned earlier. It seems that the lesson of destroying the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion's branch in Xianyang City was not enough. Now, they actually want to continue to encroach on my territory in the southern domain. After seeing that there were people he knew among the guests, Howren sneered to himself as he walked towards the backyard. He waved his hand and struck out with his palm, directly killing the 5 experts of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion who were disguised as guests in the hall. The strong energy fluctuations immediately alerted the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion's martial saints and martial emperors, who were threatening Shen Jinwen in the Heavenly Yuan Pavilion in the backyard. They immediately stood up and rushed out of the courtyard. They looked at Howren, who was walking over with gloomy expressions. "Either kneel down or die." Without stopping his footsteps towards Tianyuan Pavilion, Yu Haoran sneered and threatened. Faced with Yu Haoran's threat, a white-haired old man with the strongest cultivation asked with a gloomy expression, "Yu Haoran, we did not offend you this time. Why did you kill the 5 deacons of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion?" "When I got married, I asked His Majesty to issue an edict forbidding the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion from all businesses in the Southern Domain. If anyone violates this edict, they will be destroyed, killed, and exterminated." Yu Haoran asked coldly as he stopped about 10 meters away from the old man. "Could it be that you have already forgotten about that imperial edict? Yu Haoran, this time we set foot in the Rydok city of the Southern Domain and bought this shop of the Heavenly World Chamber of Commerce at a high price. We have His Majesty's permission." After hearing Yu Haoran's reason for killing the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion's expert, a smug smile appeared on the white-haired elder's face. At the same time, he took out a golden imperial edict from his storage ring. Then, he wrapped it in yuan li and delivered it to Yu Haoran. Yu Haoran took the edict from the old man and opened it slowly. A trace of astonishment flashed across his cold face. This was because not only did the edict allow the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion to be involved in all businesses in the Southern Domain, but the contents of the edict were personally written by Emperor Qin. At the same time, and most importantly, the imperial seal and Emperor Qin's personal seal were stamped on the bottom left corner of the edict. This meant that as long as it was in the Southern Domain, as long as it was within the sphere of influence of Emperor Qin's empire, the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion could do whatever business it wanted. No one was allowed to interfere or interfere. Emperor Qin clearly knew of the grievances between him and the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion. He also knew that he was having Bian Shenrue prepare a business for the empire, and then use the Southern Domain as a foundation to develop a chamber of commerce that belonged to the empire. Under these circumstances, not only did he allow the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion to meddle in the business of the Southern Domain again, but he also gave them such great authority. This made Yu Haoran faintly worried that his speculation had been wrong. The Green Hill Foxes very likely possessed secret techniques and methods that could control or influence Emperor Qin's mind. Originally, he had wanted to secretly investigate and gather sufficient evidence before secretly meeting with Emperor Qin to discuss how to deal with the Green Hill Foxes and the Zhou clan in one fell swoop. Now, it seemed that he needed to directly meet Emperor Qin and find out what had caused such a drastic change in him. He wasn't even worried about inciting his own anger and causing a rift between them. "Go back and tell your chairman that this shop in Rydok City is the personal property of Yu Haoran. Even His Majesty has no right to take it back or interfere." Yu Haoran's expression returned to its cold indifference after he used his yuan power to shatter the edict in his hand. "So, either you get the hell out of Rydok City now, or you die in Rydok's mountain." "Yu Haoran, are you thinking of rebelling?" Seeing that Yu Haoran had not only disobeyed Emperor Qin's orders, but also destroyed the edict that Emperor Qin had personally written himself, the white-haired old man from the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion shouted angrily. Chapter 17:30. Rydok City in the shop. "Let's go." The white-haired old man could feel the strong, murderous aura from the other party. He knew that the audacious Yu Haoran was ready to kill. Thinking of how the other party dared to destroy the branch in Xianyang City without the protection of any power, the white-haired old man knew that the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion would not let them go. Therefore, the white-haired old man immediately called out to the people behind him. He then took the lead and left the shop, leaving Rydok City. In response, Yu Haoran stopped the palace who wanted to kill the other party. This was because he needed to inform the Qin Emperor through the experts in the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion and inform the Qin Emperor about the power behind the Northern Expedition. Not only did he come personally, but he was also in a bad mood. "Prince Consort, thank you for arriving in time. Otherwise, I would not have been able to hold on for long before succumbing to the other party's intimidation." After the experts of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion and Emperor Wu left, Shun Jinwen hurriedly walked to Yu Haoran and bowed respectfully. He then sighed with a bitter smile. "Shopkeeper Shun, thank you for your hard work. Yu Haoran took out a few elixirs that could help increase one's cultivation and strength from the storage ring. He then stuffed the elixir bottle into Shun Jinwen's hand. Prince Consort, I am now your subordinate. It is my duty to protect your assets. There is no need to talk about hard work. Knowing Yu Haoran's character, Shun Jinwen obediently accepted the elixir bottle and quickly expressed his loyalty. Shopkeeper Shun, please hold on for a while longer. If the situation is out of my control, Yu Haoran, then you can take Lin Hua to the prince's mansion in Xianyang City. I will arrange a new position for you in Lin Hua. When the Heavenly World Chamber of Commerce's headquarters was in chaos, Shun Jinwen immediately contacted him and took the initiative to ask him about the operations of Rydok City. Yu Haoran was very convinced and appreciated Shun Jinwen's loyalty and business ability. Therefore, before he knew what would happen after meeting Emperor Qin, all he could do was try his best to comfort him. Emperor's son-in-law, please be at ease. This subordinate will definitely protect the signboard of heaven on earth and this shop in Rydok City before you give the order. Seeing that Yu Haoran had already considered his escape route in advance, Shun Jinwen secretly breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly made his own promise. Nodding at Shun Jinwen, Yu Haoran turned his head and ordered Yusiki and Palace. Sister, Brother Qi, let's rest in Yiyuan Pavilion for an hour. After that, we will head straight to Pinggu City. Pinggu City was more than 7,000 kilometers away from Shuangniu Mountain. To the east was the tributary of the Huai River, to the south was the Huaiqing Mountain, and to the north and west was a boundless plain. It was a city with beautiful scenery and a prosperous economy. Pinggu City originally belonged to the Jin family, which had a history of more than 1,000,000 years. It was a third-class family with a peak 9th-grade martial venerable ancestor. However, it now belonged to the southern region's Emperor Qin's kingdom. The reason was that when the northern expedition of Emperor Qin's kingdom arrived at Pinggu City, the first elder of the Jin family, who had always been united and loving, joined forces with 4 other powerful elders to launch an internal strife. The internal strife caused the deaths of all the martial venerables and martial sages in the Jin family. In the end, the northern expedition of Emperor Qin's kingdom easily took over Pinggu City without paying any price. They also temporarily used Pinggu City as a temporary base for the expedition. Stop. Tell me your name. Just as Yu Haoran brought Yusiki and Palace to the outskirts of Pinggu City and walked to the city gate, a martial arts grandmaster realm soldier shouted at them. When Yu Haoran heard the soldier shout, he could not help but frown. When he had married Qin Ling Fei, the Emperor Qin had ordered people to draw numerous portraits of him and sent them to different cities and bases. Even if the soldier before him was a new recruit that had just joined the army, so long as he was a member of the Grand Qin Empire and had received the training of new recruits, it was impossible for him to not recognize his identity. Young man, are you deaf? Didn't you hear my order just now? When he saw Yu Haoran frowning and standing there in a daze, the soldier who had questioned him just now could not help but continue to shout at him sternly. At the same time, he gathered more than 10 soldiers with higher cultivations behind him. My name is Yu Haoran, the husband of Princess Ling Fei and the only prince consort of the Emperor Qin's kingdom. Although Yu Haoran was furious at the soldiers' targeting, he did not want to have any conflict with the Northern Expedition Army before he met the Emperor Qin. Therefore, he forcefully suppressed the anger in his heart and tried to introduce himself as calmly as possible. After hearing Yu Haoran's self-introduction, a hint of panic flashed across the eyes of the soldiers who were guarding the city. However, their panic was quickly replaced by calmness. At the same time, the soldier who had questioned him just now shook his head and said, Yu Haoran, Prince Consort, I've never heard of you. Then, he pointed the spear in his hand at Yu Haoran and chased him away with a cold expression. Pinggu City has now been designated as a restricted area for the garrison. No one is allowed to enter or leave. Therefore, you should immediately turn around and leave. Otherwise, we will not introduce you and hang your corpses on the city walls. With his current status and strength, Yu Haoran had already reached the limit of his tolerance. Now that the other party was so aggressive, It completely ignited the anger that had been accumulating in his heart for a long time. When you heard my introduction, a hint of panic flashed across your eyes. This prince consort knows that you already know my identity. Yu Haoran said with a faint smile as he walked towards the city gate with the corners of his mouth slightly raised. Since you know my identity, then you should be very clear about my personality and methods. You should also know the consequences of offending me. Yu Haoran, what are you trying to do? Seeing Yu Haoran walking towards them, the soldier who was holding the spear asked with a trembling voice. I'll fulfill your wish just now and hang all your corpses on the city walls. Yu Haoran instantly put away the smile on his face and appeared in front of the soldier in a flash. Before he reached out and broke the soldier's neck, he replied like the god of death. Then, in a short 3 seconds, the necks of all 15 martial grandmasters and martial kings were crushed. Then he used the spears in their hands to hang all their corpses on the city walls. Chapter 1731. Outside Pingu City. Not only had Yu Haoran killed 15 soldiers guarding the city, but he had also hung their corpses on the city walls. Such a blatant provocation immediately enraged the hundreds of elite soldiers in the turrets and archery towers. While ringing the alarm bell, they rushed towards Yu Haoran in the air. Die! However, just as the hundreds of elite martial kings and martial emperors were 20 meters away from Yu Haoran, a cold voice rang out and a red light flashed. The hundreds of elite soldiers were instantly killed. As the rain of blood fell on his body, Yu Haoran lifted his head to look at the few old men in embroidered robes who had rushed to the city walls. The anticipation in his eyes was gradually replaced by disappointment. This was because the few martial honors who had appeared on the city walls were the great ancestors of the first-rate clans in Xianying City. Not only did they recognize and know him well, but they were also able to advance to martial honors because of the 3 pills that he had refined and the white bone soulfire that he had given them. In the past, when they had met him, they had been respectful and fawning over him. Now, when they saw him, not only were they no longer respectful, their fawning expressions had also been replaced by indifference. Senior Su, please invite His Majesty. A chill rose in Yu Haoran's heart, causing his fiery heart to gradually cool down. However, when he thought about the possibility that they had been controlled by the Green Hill Fox's bewitching secret technique, his heart was suddenly filled with endless anticipation. Therefore, after quickly adjusting his mentality, he requested in a gentler manner and tone, Yu Haoran, His Majesty will not see you. You should go back. The old man with the surname, Su, shook his head and replied, Senior Su, when I was married to Princess Ling Fei, His Majesty had personally issued a decree to allow me to see him anytime and anywhere. The old man's categorical rejection was not out of Yu Haoran's expectations. Therefore, he took the initiative to take a step back and requested, Therefore, I'll have to trouble you to ask your men to open the city gates immediately and allow me to see His Majesty personally. Yu Haoran, His Majesty has just issued an imperial edict to cancel all the promises he made to you. Old Man Su also expected that Yu Haoran would take advantage of the promise made by Emperor Qin when they were on good terms, so he wasn't surprised at all. As he replied, he took out a golden imperial edict from his sleeve. After what happened in Rydok City, Yu Haoran knew that the imperial edict must have come from Emperor Qin, so he didn't ask for it to be inspected. Since taking a step back and persuading them with kind words was useless against the manipulated elders, he could only change his mind. He planned to use his powerful strength to force his way into the city. However, the only thing that troubled him was how he should deal with the experts from the 4 great clans and the first-class clans of Xianying City if they tried to stop him. If he killed all of them, how was he supposed to answer to the clans and clans who had lost their loved ones after he dealt with the Green Hill Fox clan and the Zhou clan? If he was merciful with the number of experts gathered in the city, it would definitely exhaust too much of his strength and take up too much of his energy. It would be detrimental to his plan to eradicate the Green Hill Foxes and the Zhou clan. In desperation, he could only use special means to force Emperor Qin to leave the city and come see him. Your son, Yu Haoran, requests an audience with Father. Yu Haoran took 9 steps back and used the lion's roar secret technique to shout directly into the city. Emperor Wu's strength was at the peak of level 5. It was enough for the lion's roar secret technique to form a sound wave that spread over hundreds of kilometers, ensuring that every corner of Pingu City could hear his voice. However, after a full minute, there was still no response from the city. Your son, Yu Haoran, requests an audience with your majesty. With a slight frown, Yu Haoran continued to use the lion's roar secret technique to request an audience. However, he changed the tone and address of his request. After waiting for almost a minute, there was still no response from the city. This caused his face to gradually darken. Even if his mind was temporarily bewitched by the Green Hill Fox clan, with the cultivation and strength of a peak level 9 martial honorable and the protection of the great Emperor Qin Kingdom's fate and the entire southern region's fate, it was impossible for Emperor Qin to completely lose his mind. Therefore, there were only 2 reasons why Emperor Qin was ignoring him. Either Emperor Qin was being secretly controlled, or the Emperor Qin in the city was no longer the original Emperor Qin. However, no matter what the situation was, he had to immediately help. Without any hesitation, Yu Haoran directly activated Emperor Wu's peak level 5 divine sense and scanned the entire Pingu City. Finally, in the mansion that originally belonged to the Jin family, he sensed Emperor Qin's aura and saw his current state. Judging from his aura, Emperor Qin was still the original Emperor Qin. Judging from his current situation, he was not being controlled at all. In other words, his earlier guess was completely wrong. Emperor Qin ignored his request for an audience out of his own will. It had nothing to do with the Green Hill Fox clan or the Zhou clan. How dare you, Yu Haoran, who allowed you to secretly spy on my every move? Just as Yu Haoran was about to use his divine sense to further investigate the reason for Emperor Qin's change, Emperor Qin, who was sitting on the dragon throne in the meeting hall, suddenly stared at a certain spot in the void of the hall and asked with a slightly gloomy expression. Yu Haoran was very surprised to see that the Qin Emperor was not only able to sense the prying of his spiritual force, but also able to pinpoint the exact location of his spiritual force. Even if Emperor Qin did not deliberately conceal the aura of his divine sense, which could easily alert the martial venerables in the hall, with his peak level 9 martial venerable cultivation, it was impossible for him to directly pinpoint the exact location of Emperor Wu's peak level 5 divine sense. Yu Haoran, withdraw your divine sense immediately. Just as Yu Haoran was feeling very surprised, Thalink's expression suddenly changed and reminded him in his sea of consciousness. After many years of cooperation, Yu Haoran did not hesitate to withdraw his divine sense that had locked onto the meeting hall the moment he heard Thalink's reminder. However, the moment his divine sense left the meeting hall, Emperor Qin's eyes suddenly shot out a black ray of light, which directly destroyed the void where his divine sense had just stopped. This is recalling the terrifying power contained in the black ray of light just now, which was not at all inferior to the water arrow used by the Snake Beauty Realm expert. Yu Haoran's heart suddenly surged with tempestuous shock. Yu Haoran, return to the prince's mansion in Xianyang City now, and then control the prince's mansion to Fengrun City in the eastern region. Just as Yu Haoran was shocked by Emperor Qin's terrifying means just now, Thalink's expression in his sea of consciousness was very complicated as he ordered. Chapter 1732. Outside Pingu City. What? The purpose of temporarily giving up the opportunity to conquer the eastern region was to rescue the controlled Emperor Qin from the Green Hill Fox clan and the Zhou clan. Now that it was time for a head-on confrontation, not only did Thalink request to leave Pingu City immediately, but he also wanted to leave the great Emperor Qin's kingdom in the southern region. This made Yu Haoran rather puzzled. Yu Haoran, Emperor Qin's change was due to his excessive ambition, which caused his mind to be completely bewitched. It has nothing to do with the Green Hill Fox clan and the Zhou clan. Thalik explained with a solemn expression as he looked at Emperor Qin in the meeting hall through the barrier of the consciousness space. What's the reason? With the decades of Emperor Qin's life as an emperor, He had great control over his emotions, be it his temperament, wisdom, ability, or vision. Although he had always had the ambition to rule the entire Tianxin continent and become the emperor of all time, he had never been affected by his ambition to do anything that would harm the great Emperor Qin's kingdom. Moreover, conquering the 5 regions and unifying the Tianxin continent could be said to be the dream and ambition of every emperor. Yu Haoran found it hard to accept Thaling's explanation if it was only because of one's dream and ambition that caused one's mind to be completely bewitched. During the end of the Middle Ages, the demonic path's overlord, a peak expert of the demonic path who had just entered the supremacy realm. Back then, the demonic path's emperor almost ruled the entire Middle Ages. Heart demon supreme Yuluo burned a trace of her soul. The supreme demonic heart demon, Yuluoran, was not only a supreme demonic emperor of the demonic path, but also a top genius of the demonic path. The limitless demonic art that he created was the only supreme mental cultivation method that could surpass the blood demon art of devouring. Because the limitless demonic art could not only devour the physical body and soul of a living being, but it could also integrate the other party's talent and comprehension. I think this is the real reason why Emperor Qin and Zixuan's cultivation could advance by leaps and bounds. Thaling retracted his gaze from Emperor Qin, explaining and reminding him with a solemn expression. Yu Haoran, the reason why Emperor Qin doesn't want to see you is probably because he values and loves you from the bottom of his heart. If I'm not wrong, he should be afraid that he can't control his ambition, can't resist the fatal temptation you carry, and can't resist the order of Yu Luo's remnant soul in the sea of consciousness. He used the limitless devil technique to forcefully devour you, and then with the help of your ancestral magus body, your perfect soul, and your top-notch monstrous talent and potential, he should directly attack the realm of Emperor Wu. Thaling's explanation and conjecture shocked Yu Haoran. At the same time, a trace of warmth surged in his heart. The first thing he considered was how to completely free Emperor Qin from the control of the demon Dao, sovereign great emperor Yu Laolan's remnant soul. There's no other way. In the face of Yu Haoran's questioning, Thaling shook his head and explained. Yu Haoran, according to my observation just now, Emperor Qin is not only willing to accept Yu Laolan's remnant soul into the sea of consciousness, but they should have also reached a certain agreement. So, even if I have a way to expel Yu Laolan's remnant soul, it's useless without the cooperation of Emperor Qin himself. After explaining to this point, Thaling used divine thought to scan the dozens of Empire's higher-ups in the conference hall again. He felt the residual aura of the devil technique in their bodies, and asked with a helpless tone, Yu Haoran, you have also practiced the complete version of the great devouring technique, so you should know the fatal temptation of this kind of devouring technique. In the face of the limitless devil technique, do you think these people have the perseverance and determination to get rid of the temptation? In the face of Thaling's rhetorical question, Yu Haoran couldn't help but fall silent. In the second trial after returning to the sect, he had also used the complete version of the great devouring technique to increase his cultivation and strength. Even if he had the willpower of 2 lifetimes, and his state of mind was not inferior to that of the martial sage realm, he had almost fallen into the joy of the great devouring technique to increase his cultivation and strength. Then, the Empire's higher-ups, whose willpower and state of mind were far inferior to his, and who had already practiced the limitless devil technique for a period of time, probably couldn't get rid of this fatal temptation. However, when he thought of the 4 great guardian families, the 5 great hidden inheritance families, and the 7 top sects that listed the secret technique of devouring the flesh and blood of living creatures as a taboo, he couldn't help but worry for Emperor Qin. After all, 30,000 years ago, because the ghost sect, a giant of the devil's path, cultivated the incomplete great devouring technique, the law enforcers of the 4 great guardian families not only slaughtered nearly 100,000 disciples of the ghost sect, but also uprooted the mountain where the ghost sect was located. Yu Haoran, you don't have to worry too much. After hearing Yu Haoran's worries, Thaling smiled and comforted him. First of all, The changes in the environment of heaven and earth, the slumber of the heavenly ways rules, and the emergence of the sealed 100 tribes caused the guardian families and the hidden inheritance families to have no energy or mood to pay attention to Emperor Qin and the others who cultivated the limitless devil technique. Secondly, through my observations along the way, I found that Emperor Qin is a very cautious person. The number of people who cultivated the limitless devil technique in the entire Northern Expedition Army is less than 100. At the same time, in the name of conquering the Central Region, he could perfectly hide the secret of the limitless devil technique. Lastly, and most importantly, Yu Luoran, who had experienced a crushing defeat in the Middle Ages, should have a very meticulous plan on how to safely protect Emperor Qin and the others from using the limitless devil technique to increase their cultivation and strength. After hearing Thaling's persuasion, Yu Haoran finally breathed a sigh of relief. He raised his head and glanced at the old man, surnamed Su, and the others on the city wall. After waving his hand to put down the 15 corpses on the city wall, he cupped his hands in the direction of the Jin family mansion. After that, he called out to Yu Siki and Palace. As he soared into the sky, he turned around and headed straight for the Twin Bull Mountain at the border of the two regions. After seeing that Yu Haoran did not use his temper to force his way into Pingyang City, Emperor Qin, who was sitting on the dragon throne, could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. Your Majesty, do you know what kind of special physique and soul that kid has? Do you know what kind of heaven-defying transformation he will bring to you after devouring him? Just when Emperor Qin was secretly relieved, a flustered and exasperated question suddenly sounded in his mind. Demon Lord, Emperor Qin is warning you. You can touch anyone in this world except for Haoran. Otherwise, don't blame me for exploding my sea of consciousness and perishing together with you. After hearing the questioning voice in his mind, Emperor Qin immediately warned in a serious tone. Your Majesty, being indecisive is not the behavior of a wise ruler. In the face of Emperor Qin's warning, Yu Luoran sneered sarcastically. Demon Lord, the final outcome of a heartless person is his own destruction. In the face of Yu Luoran's sarcasm, Emperor Qin also coldly retorted. Chapter 1733. Pingyang City, Jin family's meeting hall. Unable to respond to Emperor Qin's counterattack, Yu Luoran couldn't help but ponder. Back then, he was only one step away from ruling the entire Middle Continent. Then, he was able to gather the destiny of the entire Middle Continent and become an existence like Xingtian Supreme. However, in the end, he was defeated by the betrayal of his family and subordinates. The reason was that he was heartless and unscrupulous in order to increase his cultivation and strength. This caused them to feel fear and worry. They were worried that he would make the decision to devour all the living beings in the Middle Continent for the sake of the illusory immortal realm. Thus, they chose to ally with their enemies and scheme. Demon Lord, now that our cultivation is at the peak of 9th grade martial honored realm, I already have the strength to attack Emperor Wu's realm. Shouldn't you follow our agreement and hand over the 9th level of the limitless demon art? Seeing that Yu Luoran couldn't refute his counterattack, Emperor Qin also secretly heaved a sigh of relief. What kind of person was Yu Luoran? What kind of heaven-defying strength did he possess? In this short half a month, it could be said that he was the one who had experienced it the most. Although Yu Haoran was very strong and had many trump cards, in front of Yu Luoran, the demon lord of the Middle Ages, all of his strength and trump cards were as fragile as bubbles. This was also the reason why he would rather let Yu Haoran misunderstand him and hate him. He didn't hesitate to take the risk of completely breaking off their relationship than to meet Yu Haoran. Emperor Qin's sudden request for the 9th level of the limitless demon art interrupted Yu Luoran's contemplation. At the same time, it also made him temporarily put down the idea of devouring Yu Haoran. He raised his finger and pointed at the divine soul in his consciousness space. A trace of energy with a black light entered the divine soul. Old Marshal Meng, go and pick 3 captives of Emperor Wu's realm for us. After receiving the 9th level of the limitless demon art from Yu Luoran, Emperor Qin carefully comprehended it for a while. Then, he ordered Meng Zhengkai, who was at the lower end of the hall. Understood. After Meng Zhengkai got up and accepted the order, he immediately turned and left the hall. However, his eyes revealed a trace of worry. After returning to Rydok City by tearing through the void, Yuhaoran took away all the goods in the store and had Thaling and his clone work together to set up a sealing formation. He then left the store with Shan Jinwen and Lin Hua, returning to the prince's mansion in Xianyang City. After instructing the sword without trace to arrange Shan Jinwen and Lin Hua's accommodations, Yuhaoran walked to his own courtyard with a conflicted expression on his face. Activating the tactical formation of the prince's mansion to leave Xianyang City, leave the Emperor Qin's kingdom, and finally go to Fengrun City in the eastern region, he had to ask for Qin Lingfei's consent in advance for such an important decision. But how could he ask her? What kind of reason did he use to make her agree? It was precisely because of the helplessness in his heart that he was unable to reach out and push open the courtyard door. He could only stand there hesitantly. "Prince Consort, you're back." Qin Lingfei, who had just finished her cultivation, habitually used her spiritual sense to check the situation in the mansion. She was surprised to see Yuhaoran standing at the courtyard door and immediately rushed out in surprise. Looking at Qin Lingfei's innocent smile, Yuhaoran's heart was filled with tenderness. He couldn't help but sigh softly. At the same time, he had to use the method of lying to keep her in a carefree state. "Lingfei, there's something I need to discuss with you." Holding Qin Lingfei's lily-white hand, Yuhaoran solemnly reminded her as he led her to the pavilion in the courtyard. "Prince Consort, did something happen to Imperial Father?" Yuhaoran had suddenly returned to the southern region from the war in the eastern region and immediately rushed to the battlefield in the central region. This made Qin Lingfei realize that Imperial Father might have met with trouble. Therefore, when she saw Yuhaoran's solemn reminder, she immediately asked nervously. Yuhaoran stretched out his hand and scratched Qin Lingfei's nose. He tried his best to maintain a relaxed tone as he criticized, "Silly girl, how could Imperial Father, who has millions of elite soldiers protecting him, be in trouble?" "That's good." Hearing that Imperial Father was not in trouble, Qin Lingfei immediately heaved a sigh of relief. At the same time, she couldn't help but roll her eyes at Yuhaoran. After gesturing for Qin Lingfei to sit upright on the stone chair, Yuhaoran stretched out his finger and pressed it on her forehead. Then, he transmitted the image of the deep pit that he saw in the Hengduan Mountains, as well as the image of the ancient god-fiend's seal formation to her. "Prince Consort, what is that deep pit? Were those 2 seal formations?" Qin Lingfei could clearly sense the billowing murderous aura contained in the deep pit and the seal formation through the images condensed by divine telekinesis. She couldn't help but ask in trepidation. "Those are the seal formations used to seal the ancient god-fiend and god-fiend clans. As for the deep pit, it's used to seal the hundreds of millions of monster experts from the ancient times." Yuhaoran tried his best to make his tone sound more solemn as he explained. At the same time, his face and eyes revealed a worried expression. "Lingfei, when I was resealing the ancient god-fiend and god-fiend clans, I was deceived by the powerhouses of the 4 guardian clans. As a result, the seal formation was not perfect. At the same time, the formation used to seal the ancient god-fiend clans was also destroyed by the 9-tailed green fox of the Green Hill Fox clan. As a result, the sealing effect of the formation is gradually weakening. Prince Consort, do you want to control the prince's mansion and leave Xianyang City?" In order to better control the prince's mansion's formation, Qin Lingfei had chosen formations as her supporting path of cultivation. Although her current attainment in formations wasn't very high, with the various formations manuals left behind by Thaling and her second clone, her knowledge of formations theory was rather rich. She knew what an incomplete and damaged seal formation meant to the ancient god-fiend, and god-fiend clans that were sealed. She also knew what it meant to Xianyang City, which was situated between the 3 ancient clans when the seal formation lost its effectiveness. That's right. Yu Haoran began his lie as he nodded to confirm Qin Lingfei's conjecture. In 5 months to a year, the ancient God-Fiend, and God-Fiend clans will be fully reborn. When that time comes, the entire Xianyang city will probably be destroyed by the 3 powerful clans. Perhaps even the entire southern region will be under their rule. That's why I've led 100,000 elite soldiers to conquer the eastern region, while His Majesty has personally led 10 million elite soldiers to conquer the central region. All of this is to provide temporary shelter for the hundreds of millions of citizens of Emperor Qin's kingdom. Chapter 1734. Xianyang City. In the Prince's Mansion. No, our destination is the Eastern Domain, Feng Run City, which I have just captured some time ago. After shaking his head to deny Qin Lingfei's speculation, Yu Haoran continued his plan of lying. According to my discussion with my father, the Central Domain, which is rich in spiritual qi of heaven and earth and has many strong cultivators, is likely to be the next target of the ancient demon race and god race. Therefore, continuing to occupy and expand the territory of the Eastern Domain is also a precautionary measure. Qin Lingfei, who didn't hear the flaw in Yu Haoran's lie, nodded and accepted the reason he just gave, and couldn't help but ask about the time of departure from Xianyang City. Midnight today. Not wanting to attract too much attention and suspicion because of the departure of the prince's mansion, Yu Haoran decided to leave quietly in the dead of night. After nodding to indicate that she knew the exact time of departure, Qin Lingfei got up and planned to go to the Palace of Compassionate and Peaceful in the Imperial Palace to resign from the Empress Dowager Zixuan. Lingfei, let me go with you. Zixuan's cultivation and strength had advanced by leaps and bounds, and it was very likely that Emperor Qin had taught her the limitless demon art. Considering Zixuan's state of mind and perseverance, Yu Haoran was worried that when she faced Qin Lingfei, whose talent and potential had reached the monstrous level, and whose cultivation and strength were similar to hers, she would be unable to control the inner demon formed by the limitless demon art, and eventually do something that would hurt Qin Lingfei. Therefore, he got up at the same time and suggested with a smile. Okay. Yu Haoran was willing to accompany her to resign from the Empress Dowager, which was enough to prove his love for her, and it was enough to show that he was willing to take the initiative to further ease the relationship with the imperial family. This made Qin Lingfei very, very happy. At midnight, in the void 10,000 meters above Xianyang City, Yu Haoran came alone to the square where the array hub was located. The ink-black night did not affect his vision at all. Yu Haoran looked down at Xianyang City, which he had lived in for more than 2 years, and recalled every detail of his time in Xianyang City. Then, he let out a sigh of reluctance. Alas, he knew very well that Xianyang City, which had lost the protection of himself and Emperor Qin, had no hope of surviving the ancient war between the demon race and the god race. After letting out a soft sigh, Yu Haoran shook his head and dispelled the distracting thoughts in his mind. While sitting cross-legged in front of the white tiger statue, he called out to his second clone that was cultivating in the victor. Brother Ran, I'll be troubling you from now on. Brother Yu, don't worry. I'm here for you. You could just focus on your cultivation. After controlling the core of the mansion's formation with his divine sense, the second clone commanded the prince's mansion to stealthily leave Xianyang City. Okay. Nodding his head in response to the second clone's instructions, Yu Haoran took out dozens of Wu Zun and Emperor Wu level black and white wings. He planned to take advantage of the time when the mansion was heading to the Eastern Domain to raise his mental state, physical state, spiritual energy, and soul power to the early stage of Emperor Wu level 7. Only when all 4 indicators reached the early stage of Emperor Wu level 7 would he have the confidence to rely on the assistance of the Celestial Ending Sword and Celestial Trapping Sword to defeat and behead the real Emperor Wu level 7 expert. Only then would he be able to truly let loose and continue to expand his territory. While the second clone stealthily left Xianyang City under the control of the prince's mansion, in the courtyard of the Palace of Compassionate and Peaceful in the Imperial City, Zixuan, who was wearing a purple dress, had a complicated expression in her eyes. Empress Dowager, after I lead the army to conquer the Bai clan's Nine-Dragon City, I will use Nine-Dragon City as the temporary imperial capital. As Zixian watched the prince's mansion stealthily leave Xianyang City with a complicated expression, a faint silhouette slowly condensed beside her, and then gently reminded her. Therefore, during this period of time, apart from making the best use of your time to raise your cultivation and strength, you must also prepare to leave Xianyang City at any time. Your Majesty, are you really going to give up on Xianyang City? Turning her head to look at the faint silhouette, Zixian's complicated expression was replaced by reluctance, and her tone was somewhat unwilling as she asked. After all, she had lived in Xianyang City for nearly 4/5 of her life. She already had very deep feelings for every brick, every tile, every blade of grass, and every tree in the city. Empress Dowager, actually, I'm also unwilling to give up on the country that my ancestors fought for. However, according to the information provided by the prince consort, the birth of the ancient demon god clan and the Yao clan is both unstoppable and unstoppable. At the same time, according to the demon lord's investigation and speculation using a secret technique, the three ancient clans all have supreme existences of the supremacy level. Facing Zixian's reluctance to leave Xianyang City, Emperor Qin's silhouette also somewhat reluctantly persuaded her. Therefore, in order to protect the bloodline of the Qin clan, and also in order to recover the lost land in the future, I have no choice but to temporarily give up on Xianyang City and give up the entire southern region. Sigh. After hearing Emperor Qin's persuasion, Zixian lightly sighed and nodded in agreement to leave Xianyang City. 5 days. Even with the second clone of the Formation Emperor personally controlling the mansion's formation hub, it still took a total of 5 days and 5 nights to travel from Xianyang City to Fengrun City in the eastern region. Although the time spent on the journey was very long, Yu Haoran's harvest was equally astonishing. The 66 martial venerables and Emperor Wu's black and white wings allowed his state of mind, physical grade, origin power, and soul power to reach the peak of Emperor Wu's 7th rank. Moreover, he didn't feel the slightest hint of a limit to his strength increase. This meant that he could still rely on the black and white wings of the ancient god and devil clans to continue increasing his realm and strength. At the same time, with the help of the 5 4-colored and 2 5-colored void fruits, as well as the space crystal that contained pure spatial energy, he successfully comprehended the law of the West and the law of nothingness. This also allowed him to smoothly master 8 types of auxiliary law powers, and he was only 4 types away from comprehending and cultivating the law of space. After being reminded by his second clone, Yu Haoran slowly exhaled the turbid air that had accumulated in his chest, and then slowly opened his eyes. Then, he directly used his divine thought to inform Qin Lingfei, the sword without trace, and the others to gather at the square. At the same time, Thaling and his second clone also quietly left the Knowledge Sea space, and then used the formation flags that Thaling had just refined, and completely merged the Prince's Mansion's formation with Fengrun City's formation. This could not only strengthen the Prince's Mansion's defense, but also increase the power of Fengrun City's attack formation. After Qin Lingfei, the sword without trace, Yu Siki, Xiang Muling, and Palace arrived at the square, Yu Haoran opened a gap in the mansion's defense formation and led everyone to the courtyard of the mansion. Master, I want to go. Chapter 1735. Fengrun City, City Lord's Mansion. Go, but be careful. It had only been 3 days since they left Fengrun City. How could Yu Haoran forget about Xiang Muling's hobbies? Therefore, although she didn't say her request out loud, Yu Haoran had already guessed it. His eyes were filled with doting love. I understand, Master. After receiving Yu Haoran's approval, Xiang Muling immediately smiled and nodded. She turned around and rushed out of the courtyard while waving at Qin Lingfei and the sword without trace. First Master's wife, second Master's wife, Ling will be busy first. This little girl is still so careless. Qin Lingfei shook her head and smiled as she watched Xiang Yuling rush out of the courtyard like a child. After looking away from Xiang Yuling, Yu Haoran reminded Qin Lingfei and the others, Lingfei Wuhan, sister, according to your moods and habits, if you're willing to stay in the city lord's mansion, you can choose a courtyard that you like. If you're not willing to stay, then you can stay in the prince's mansion. After hearing Yu Haoran's reminder, Yu Siki immediately flew back to the prince's mansion. Palace thought for a moment before speaking. Brother Yu, I have at most a month before I have to lift the suppression of my breakthrough and make the final breakthrough. Thus, I plan to use the Xianhuang Qi in the mansion to increase my accumulation and try to break through to the peak of the 9th stage of the martial emperor realm. Hearing that Palace planned to break through to the next realm in a short period of time, Yu Haoran was pleasantly surprised. Brother Qi, in the next month, other than secretly guarding the left army, I will be staying in the city lord's mansion most of the time. I don't need your help for the time being, so you can cultivate in peace. According to the appearance of Yu Luolan's remnant soul in the Middle Ages, Thowling sensed that something was wrong. With the help of the 6 chaos imprints in his main body, Victor, he re-examined the tomb of the great god Jinyuan in the Middle Ages. He discovered that the tomb's formation, which originally needed another 4 months to activate, was suddenly showing signs of loosening. Furthermore, according to the rate of loosening, it would take at most 1 to 2 months for the tomb to be exposed to the world. At the same time, due to the premature activation of the tomb's defense formation, the moment the tomb was fully activated, it would cause a tremor that would shake the entire Tianxian continent. At that time, except for the godly state experts who were restricted by the heavens' consciousness, most of the demigod realm fake gods would definitely swarm in. Even innate treasures like the void mirror might appear. If Palace could successfully advance to the peak of Emperor Wu's 9th level before he officially opened an account in the tomb of the great god Jinyuan, then with the terrifying sword Qi contained in the immortal sword, he would at least have the strength of a first tribulation demigod or an early second tribulation demigod. At the same time, he was eager to return to Phone Run City in the eastern region and decided not to leave the city lord's mansion for a while. He also hoped to use this time to raise his strength to the peak of Emperor Wu's 9th level or the first tribulation demigod realm. This was because only in this way could he compete with countless demigod realm experts for the treasures left behind by the great god Jinyuan and help Thowling take back the chaos imprint that belonged to the Bell of Chaos from the weapon spirit of the Void Mirror. Got it. After nodding to indicate that he understood, Palace also soared into the sky and went straight to the prince's mansion. Ling Fei, Wu Hen, you two go ahead and choose the rooms you like. I'll discuss the military affairs of Phone Run City with General Lan and the others. After retracting his gaze from Palace, Yu Haoran instructed Qin Lingfei and the sword without trace. He walked toward the meeting hall of the city lord's mansion. At the same time, he used his divine thought to inform Lan Rong and the others who were cultivating in seclusion. Qinghu Mountain Range, above Qinghu Lake. Looking at the scarlet low that was sitting cross-legged in the air, Yu Haoran's expression was slightly nervous. Originally, it was estimated that he would need about a month to strengthen his accumulation so that he could directly break through the peak of Emperor Wu's 9th level. However, only 20 days had passed, and Palace could no longer suppress the boiling power in his body to the extent that he had no choice but to break through to the next realm. Would the lack of 10 days of accumulation affect his final realm? This was the reason why Yu Haoran was nervous and worried. After all, the peak of Emperor Wu's 9th level and the peak of Emperor Wu's 9th level were 2 completely different realms. The levels that the two represented were different, and the difference in strength between them was also like the difference between heaven and earth. Brother Yu, I'm going to start. Palace, who felt that his body was almost ready, suddenly opened his eyes and reminded Yu Haoran, Brother Qi, you can break through to the next realm with all your might. Leave the rest to me. Yu Haoran put away the nervous look in his eyes and directly took out the celestial trapping sword. He pretended to be relaxed and assured Palace. Nodding his head, Palace directly removed the seal on the power in his body and allowed the boiling demon power and soul power to break through the bottleneck of the realm that had already been loosened. Boom! Just as Pallas removed the seal on his body, a dull sound of thunder rang out from his body. Accompanied by the dull sound of thunder, an aura that terrified countless beasts in the mountain range rapidly rose from his body. After 10 seconds, the aura suddenly increased by a fraction. After 30 seconds, the aura increased by another fraction. After a minute, the aura increased by yet another fraction. Boom! Accompanied by the second dull sound of thunder from Pallas's body, the terrifying aura suddenly increased by more than 10 times. All the beasts around Lake Qing that were below the peak of the 3rd level of the martial emperor realm either crawled on the ground in submission or turned to flee to the outskirts of the mountain range. Boom! 10 minutes later, when the third, even more violent, muffled thunder rang out from the Scarlet Lotus body, not only did all the exotic beasts in the entire Qinghu mountain range flee in panic, even Yu Haoran couldn't help but feel nervous. Thowling, with your experience, can Pallas reach the limit of the peak of the 9th level of the Emperor Wu in the end? Logically speaking, there shouldn't be any problems with the Scarlet Lotus' current level of accumulation. However, the breakthrough of the martial emperor realm is not only related to one's talent, potential, comprehension, and profound accumulation, but also one's luck. After hearing Yu Haoran's question, Thowling first briefly explained the factors that affected Emperor Wu's breakthrough before shaking his head and replying. Chapter 1736. In the Qinghu mountain range, even the experienced Thowling was unable to determine whether Pallas could successfully advance to the limit of Emperor Wu's peak level 9. This made Yu Haoran even more nervous and worried. At the same time, he focused all his attention on Pallas. However, at this moment, about 20 kilometers away from Qinghu, a middle-aged man in a brocade robe and a white-haired old man in a gray robe appeared in the void that was torn apart. Master, the exotic beast in the depths of the mountain range that is advancing to the peak level 9 of Emperor Wu's peak level 9 is not only gifted, but also has an outstanding bloodline. Do you think I should capture it alive? The old man in the gray robe and white robe carefully sensed the aura of a breakthrough coming from the depths of the mountain range. Then he suggested to the middle-aged man in the brocade robe excitedly, "Go, be careful." Although he did not use his divine thought to check carefully, the middle-aged man in the brocade robe knew how outstanding the exotic beast talent and bloodline were based on the reactions of the exotic beasts that were fleeing for their lives and the powerful aura that exceeded their own level. Therefore, he nodded in agreement to the old man in the gray robe suggestion without any hesitation. "Master, please wait for a moment. I'll be right back." After getting the approval of the middle-aged man in the brocade robe, the old man in the gray robe licked his lips excitedly. Then, the old man in the gray robe soared into the sky and turned into a bolt of lightning, heading straight for Qinghu. "Yu Haoran, this is bad. A false god expert who has just advanced to the demigod realm is speeding up and rushing toward us." Although his attention was on Pallas like Yu Haoran, Thowling, who was once a peak supreme being, still maintained a high level of vigilance when it came to sensing danger. The moment the old man in the gray robe soared into the sky, Thowling sensed the approaching danger and immediately used his divine thought of the peak level 3 demigod realm to check. Then, his expression changed abruptly as he reminded Yu Haoran, "Thowling, use the possession technique immediately." The moment he received Thowling's reminder, Yu Haoran, who also sensed a powerful force speeding up, soared into the sky and ordered Thowling in his sea of consciousness. "Stop!" Yu Haoran soared into the sky and flew about 1,000 meters forward while holding the celestial trapping sword's hilt. "My brother is breaking through in the peak level 9 of the mountain range. If you don't want to die, you'd better get out of my way right now." The gray-robed elder's eyes flashed with a hint of disdain as he used his divine sense to scan the blue-robed youth blocking his way and discovered that he was only a peak ninth-grade martial honorable. Heaven slaying heaven. Seeing that his opponent did not slow down at all, Yuhaoran's face darkened and he took a deep breath. Then he overdrew a part of his ancestral witch bloodline and mobilized all his yuan qi and soul power. Together with the celestial trapping sword and the power of the law of flash, he used the most powerful move of the heaven and earth massacre sword technique. This is bad. The old man in the gray robe, who was charging with all his might, sensed that the sword technique used by the young man in the blue robe was infinitely close to the First Tribulation demigod realm. Although he was also a First Tribulation demigod realm cultivator, he had not fully grasped the power of the demigod realm. At the same time, capturing the demigod beast that had just reached the peak level 9 of the Great Emperor realm was not worth using his full strength. Therefore, in the face of the sword qi that crossed time and space, the old man in the gray robe did not have the time to use his full strength. He could only use his divine thought to activate the lower Emperor realm defensive artifact. Boom! Puff! Accompanied by a violent roar, the old man in the gray robe screamed and spat out blood. His body was like a kite with a broken string as he crashed heavily onto the hard ground. Yuhaoran, who also found it hard to believe, was able to severely injure a semi-divinity realm expert with a single move. Fortunately, with his rich combat experience, he quickly recovered from his daze. The power of the law of speed allowed him to appear in front of the old man in the gray robe in a flash and slash at his head with the celestial trapping sword. When the celestial trapping sword was less than a meter away from the old man in the gray robe, Thowling shouted at the top of his lungs, "Yuhaoran, back off now!" Without any hesitation, the power of the law of the East forced him to retreat 100 meters away. At the same time, a sharp sword with a terrifying aura appeared where he had been standing. According to the position of the sharp sword, the target of the sneak attack was the sea of consciousness space between his eyebrows. According to the terrifying aura of the sharp sword, it meant that the sharp sword had reached the divine realm. If it pierced his eyebrows, his divine soul would definitely be severely injured. Therefore, Yuhaoran's face turned gloomy when he saw the sword floating in the air. "Boy, you're so young, but you're so ruthless." A middle-aged man in a brocade robe appeared beside the sword as he suppressed his anger. "Yuhaoran, I'll control the body from now on, because this person is at the peak of the Second Tribulation demigod realm." Just when the middle-aged man in brocade robe appeared beside the sword, Thowling, who had successfully performed the possession technique, reminded him with a sudden change in expression. "Okay." While agreeing to Thowling's suggestion, Yuhaoran looked coldly at the middle-aged man in brocade robe and retorted, "The strange beast that is breaking through in the depths of Qinghu mountain range is my good brother. At the same time, I've already warned him, but this old dog didn't listen. Therefore, it's not that I'm ruthless, but this old dog doesn't know what's good for him. Boy, you're courting death." Yuhaoran's blatant humiliation completely infuriated the old man in gray robe, who had used elixirs to stabilize his injuries. He instantly took out his natal sword of Upper Emperor Realm and slashed at Yuhaoran as he shouted angrily, "Die!" Thowling quickly took control of the body and activated the origin energy of the immortal trapping sword. Together with the sword technique, he enveloped the old man in gray robe and the middle-aged man in brocade robe. "Elder Yun, be careful." When the middle-aged man in brocade clothes saw the blue-clothed young man, who was originally full of vigor, instantly replaced by the vicissitudes of life, a strong sense of fatal danger surged in his heart. He immediately used the deity realm sword in his hand to display his strongest sword technique while reminding the gray-robed old man loudly. Chapter 1737. In the Qinghu mountain range. The moment the gray-robed elder's Upper Emperor natal sword came into contact with the terrifying sword qi, it was shattered into pieces by the immense power contained in the sword qi. Immediately after, the terrifying sword Qi did not weaken in the slightest. After forcibly destroying the damaged lower emperor natal sword, the gray-robed elder was shredded into minced meat. Damn it! He saw that his own sword technique could not withstand a single blow from the terrifying sword Qi. He saw that the gray-robed elder was shredded into minced meat by the terrifying sword Qi. The middle-aged man cursed under his breath. He quickly took out a green jade pendant and crushed it. The crushed green jade pendant instantly exploded with a dense green energy. The green energy quickly formed a green energy light shield, which directly covered the middle-aged man in the brocade robe. At this moment, the terrifying sword Qi slashed heavily on the green energy shield. Boom! With a violent roar, the terrifying sword Qi began to tear the green energy shield apart bit by bit like a cutting machine. Damn it! Howren, the jade pendant he used just now was a divine power shield left behind by an expert who had just entered the godly state. Thowling reminded Howren with a darkened face when he saw that the green energy shield was constantly depleting the terrifying sword Qi. Damn it! The middle-aged man in embroidered robes cursed with a gloomy expression when he saw the azure light barrier in a precarious situation. This was because the jade pendant that contained divine power was his strongest life-saving means. If the green energy shield was broken by the terrifying sword Qi, he would either have to use a top-notch escape talisman to escape or die at the hands of the young man in blue. However, as the clan leader of a hidden family and the true ruler of the Tianxin continent, he could not accept either outcome. Therefore, the middle-aged man in embroidered clothes threatened Howren with a gloomy expression before the green light barrier was broken. Boy, do you know who I am? If the target of the middle-aged man's threat was Howren, he might have asked him back with interest. Then, he might have considered whether he should show mercy due to his fear of the other party's background. However, the one who was controlling the body was the Thowling, a primordial treasure that had existed since the beginning of the world. He was one of the most powerful peak-level supremes in the world, a supreme existence that could rarely be threatened. Therefore, Thowling did not pay any attention to the middle-aged man's threat. Instead, due to his displeasure, he further stimulated the origin energy of the immortal trapping sword and increased the power of the sword Qi attack. Kid, my surname is Lan, and I am the patriarch of the Lan family, one of the 5 great hidden families in the profound sky continent. When a middle-aged man saw that the blue-clothed young man not only ignored his threat, but also continued to increase the power of the terrifying sword Qi attack, the middle-aged man's expression changed abruptly. He quickly revealed his identity and continued to threaten. If you dare to harm me, the hundreds of demigod experts and dozens of martial gods of the Lan family will exterminate your entire clan. In the space of the sea of consciousness, when he heard that the middle-aged man was the patriarch of the Lan family, one of the 5 great hidden families, Howren's expression instantly turned ugly. When Zhongli Shuiqin was living in the prince's mansion, she had introduced the origins of the 5 great hidden families to him in detail. The 5 great hidden families in the profound sky continent were the Ying Tai family that had inherited the bloodline of Ying Tai Wuju from the Middle Ages, the Shangwan family that had inherited the bloodline of Shangwan Patian from the Middle Ages, the Kong family that had inherited the bloodline of Saint Kong Xiu from the Middle Ages, the Lan family that had inherited the bloodline of Supremes from the Middle Ages, and the Zhongli family that had inherited the bloodline of Supremes from the Middle Ages. Among the 5 great hidden families, the Zhongli family had the longest history, the Ying Tai family had the strongest bloodline, the Shangwan family was the most domineering, the Kong family was the most humble, and the Lan family was the most powerful. At the same time, according to Zhongli Shuiqin's warning, the Lan family was the most untouchable among the 5 great hidden families. Because of the special bloodline of the Lan family, it was difficult for them to give birth to the next generation. Therefore, the population of the Lan family was very small, which made the Lan family very united. Basically, if something happened to a member of the Lan family, the whole family would take revenge immediately. Besides, their revenge was different from that of the Qian family. They would take revenge without any reason, without considering any consequences. Not to mention that the middle-aged man in front of him was the patriarch of the Lan family. If he killed him, not only would he be hunted down by the demigods and martial gods of the Lan family, but the Emperor Qin Kingdom and the 100 Qi Gate would also be implicated. Thinking of Zhongli Shuiqin's introduction of the hidden families, Yu Haoran knew that he couldn't afford to offend the Lan family for the time being. Helplessly, he could only persuade Thaling, who was increasing the power of his sword Qi, to spare the man's life for now. After hearing Yu Haoran's introduction of the middle-aged man in front of him, Thaling, who had a better understanding of the inherited families of the Middle Ages, had a cold and gloomy light flash across his eyes. Next, he didn't listen to Yu Haoran's warning and order. Instead, he directly activated the 6 marks of chaos in Victor's body, and used the marks of chaos to increase the power of his spiritual body, which in turn increased the power of his sword Qi. In an instant, the power of the sword Qi increased by tens of times, and reached the peak of 3rd-level martial god, which was far beyond the limit of the cyan light shield. Puff! Along with a clear, cracking sound, the cyan light shield was broken in an instant. Then, in front of the middle-aged man's eyes, the terrifying sword Qi, which was at the peak of 3rd-level martial god, directly shredded him into a puddle of blood. Thaling, what are you doing? Because Thaling's action of killing the head of the Lan family was too unexpected, and the process was too fast, Yu Haoran only reacted the moment the head of the Lan family was completely killed. Thinking of the consequences of killing the head of the Lan family, and thinking of the Emperor Qin's kingdom and the 100 Qi Gate that might be implicated, Yu Haoran, who was instantly filled with endless anger, couldn't help but ask sternly, Yu Haoran, don't be angry. After I erase all the traces of killing the head of the Lan family, I'll explain to you in detail why I killed him. Faced with Yu Haoran's stern question, Thaling didn't care at all. As he reminded him, he used a secret technique to clean up the aura left behind by the attack. Chapter 1738. In the Qinghu mountain range. Looking at Pallas, who had successfully advanced to the peak of the 9th level of the Great Emperor Realm, and was trying his best to break through to the peak of the 9th level of the Emperor Wu, Thaling voluntarily handed over control of his body and explained in detail why he had tried his best to kill the leader of the Lan family. Among the 5 great hidden families, the most reasonable were the Zhongli family and the Kong family. The most unreasonable were the Shangwan family and the Lan family. If you offended the people of the Shangwan clan and Lan clan, especially the arrogant direct descendants, you would either immediately kneel down and beg for their forgiveness, or you would directly destroy the corpses and destroy the evidence. You must not show the slightest bit of a woman's opinion. Otherwise, with the tyrannical and cruel nature of the 2 inherited families, it would be too late to regret the bloody revenge afterwards. After hearing Thaling's detailed explanation, Yu Haoran, who had regained control of his body, could not help but fall into silence. As the saying goes, a man has no intention of hurting a tiger, but a tiger wants to hurt a man because he was afraid of the other party's identity as the leader of an inherited family. He was willing to take the initiative to let the other party go in order to avoid implicating his family and friends. However, the other party was the leader of a hidden family. Whether it was for the dignity of the family or his own face, he would definitely eliminate all hidden dangers that could lead to the disappearance of the humiliation and the exposure of the secret. When the time came, the opponent who would appear to kill him would not be just a demigod expert of the 1st or 2nd tribulation realm. After taking a deep breath and forcefully dispelling the depression in his heart, Yu Haoran could not help but begin to worry and think about how to deal with the revenge of the Lan family. Yu Haoran, just now I used a secret technique unique to the ancient god tribe to clean up all traces of killing the leader of the Lan family. Even if the Lan family's god-level expert were to personally make a move, he would not be able to find any clues about us. After hearing Yu Haoran's worries, Thaling smiled and comforted him. Thaling, what if a god-level expert were to make a move? Yu Haoran did not feel at ease because of Thaling's comforting words. His tone was still serious as he continued to ask. If a god-level expert were to make a move, he would at most be able to deduce the extent of the secret technique I used and use the secret technique to clean up the traces to suspect the ancient god expert. This would be more beneficial to you. Facing Yu Haoran's questioning, Thaling's expression was even more relaxed as he explained. Seeing that Thaling had considered all the hidden dangers after killing the leader of the Lan family, Yu Haoran finally let out a sigh of relief. Then, he raised his head and looked at the red loaf that had risen above the green lake. His eyes immediately revealed a nervous and expectant look. Break! Sensing that the accumulation in its body was rapidly draining away, the scarlet loaf knew that it still lacked a little bit of maturity to break through the limits of its realm. Fortunately, before the breakthrough, Yu Haoran had already refined several kinds of top-notch pills for him that could stimulate his potential and help him increase his cultivation. Therefore, after taking out 3 sparkling pills the size of longans from the independent space and swallowing them all in one go, Pallas roared at the sky. Then, with the help of the pills and his remaining cultivation realm, he began to break through the limit of Emperor Wu's level 9 peak. Boom! Following an even more intense sound of thunder, a terrifying aura suddenly increased by dozens of times. It directly shattered a large part of the void above the green lake and caused countless void turbulence energy to flow down like a waterfall. Facing the surging void turbulence energy, Pallas did not panic at all. He waved his hand. Then, a seemingly ordinary palm energy slapped all the energy of the void turbulence back into the void crack, and at the same time, it also smoothed out the void crack that had been torn apart. After that, Pallas quickly withdrew his terrifying aura and appeared beside Yu Haoran in a flash. Brother Yu, thank you. It was all thanks to Yu Haoran's wholehearted protection that he was able to break through the realm without any distractions. It was all thanks to the 3 types of pills that he was able to reach the limit of the level 9 peak of the martial Emperor realm and possess the strength of a first tribulation demigod. In the face of Yu Haoran's kindness, Pallas did not care about consolidating his realm after the breakthrough. First, he solemnly cupped his hands and bowed to express his gratitude. Brother Qi, with our friendship, do you still need to be so courteous? Yu Haoran pretended to be angry and questioned him. Huh? Yu Haoran pretended to be unhappy and questioned him. This made Pallas even more touched. After a few laughs, he planned to consolidate his realm after the breakthrough. However, Yu Haoran shook his head and stopped him. Brother Qi, let's go back to the prince's mansion in Feng Run City to consolidate your realm. As a hidden family that had been passed down since the Middle Ages, the Lan family must have kept the life tablets of every direct descendant. The news of the family leader's life tablet being broken should have alarmed all the experts in the family. Faced with the unexpected death of the family leader, the third tribulation demigod experts of the Lan family would have probably rushed over. Even deity realm divine, spirit realm experts might descend upon them. Therefore, in the face of the countless experts of the Lan family who were enraged, it was wise to hide temporarily. All right, Pallas immediately nodded in agreement when he thought of the heaven and earth Qi in the prince's mansion that could accelerate the consolidation of the realm and assist in the transformation of the power of law. Just as Yu Haoran and Pallas used the method of tearing the void to leave the Green Lake and left behind a Thaling formation to erase all traces, the void above where the family leader and the gray-robed elder were killed was suddenly torn apart. Immediately after, 9 experts with terrifying auras walked out from the torn void. Dihua, immediately check all the traces left at the scene and try your best to find the murderer who killed the family leader. Among the 9 experts floating in the air, a slightly thin, white-haired old man in a sky-blue robe ordered a middle-aged man in a brocade robe. Yes, Dihua. The middle-aged man in brocade robe, called Dihua, cupped his hands in obeisance and directly floated above where the family leader and the gray-robed elder were killed. Then, he formed a special seal with his 10 fingers and twitched his nose that was slightly bigger than an ordinary person's. When the seal formed merged into the void, and his twitching nose did not smell anything. Dihua cupped his hands in obeisance and replied with a hint of fear on his face. Great Elder, please forgive Dihua for being incompetent. I can't find any traces left by the murderer. Get lost. After hearing Dihua's reply, the white-haired old man in the blue robe scolded with a gloomy face. Then, the gloomy face was instantly replaced by a smile. The white-haired old man in the blue robe gently ordered a middle-aged man in a gray robe who had a slightly elegant temperament. Chapter 1739. In Qinghu Mountain Range. The middle-aged man with an elegant temperament nodded indifferently in the face of the white-haired old man in a blue robe's gentle command. Then, he appeared directly on the ground where the Lan clan leader and the gray-robed old man were killed. He sat down cross-legged and began to form seals quickly with his 10 fingers. But unlike the Earthflower seal, the seals formed by Tian Tung did not merge into the surrounding void, but just floated in front of him. When there were 9 seals formed by his 10 fingers, Tian Tung suddenly put his palms together and yelled softly, "Merge!" With Tian Tung's yell, the 9 seals quickly merged together and gradually turned into a smooth mirror surface. The images of the Lan clan leader and the gray-robed old man slowly appeared on the mirror surface. This also made the 8 experts floating in the air reveal a trace of surprise in their eyes. But the surprise in their eyes did not last for long, as it was interrupted by a special energy that appeared out of thin air on the mirror surface. The special energy that appeared out of thin air on the mirror directly erased the 2 figures that appeared in the mirror at a speed that was as fast as a clap of thunder. Facing the disappearance of the 2 figures in the mirror surface, the 8 experts floating in the air immediately revealed a look of anger in their eyes. But Tian Tung's expression did not change at all. His palms that had just been put together quickly separated, and then his 10 fingers continued to form seals at lightning speed and merge the seals into the mirror surface. After condensing a total of 18 seals that merged into the mirror surface, Tian Tung breathed a sigh of relief and revealed a proud smile on his face. Tian Tung, who is the murderer? Seeing the smile on Tian Tung's face, the white-haired old man in a blue robe appeared in front of him in a flash and asked anxiously, "Great Elder, wait a moment." Tian Tung raised his head and signaled to the white-haired old man in a blue robe. He stretched out his slender white left hand and patted the mirror surface in front of him gently. Then, in the ripples that appeared on the surface of the mirror, a slightly illusory figure slowly appeared. Although the figure that appeared in the mirror surface was too faint to really see his appearance. The 4 pairs of white wings that stretched out behind his back made the white-haired old man in a blue robe unable to help but curse with gritted teeth. "Damn God-Ray scum, this old man will tear you to shreds." Looking at the phantom of the Shun clan expert that appeared in the mirror, a middle-aged man in a green robe in midair had a look of suspicion in his eyes. After that, he directly appeared beside the blue-robed, white-haired old man in a flash and reminded him with a slight frown. "Great Elder, Elder Tian Tung, the ancient god and demon races have been sealed by the 4 guardian families and Yuhaoren. Then, how did this expert of the god clan break the seal and leave the ancient god test grounds? How did he suddenly appear in the Qinghu mountain range and launch a sneak attack on the patriarch?" After hearing the middle-aged man's reminder, the white-haired old man in blue robes couldn't help but fall into deep thought. However, Tian Tung's eyes revealed a hint of displeasure. "Lan Longwei, are you doubting the results of my formula Dao calculations?" After hearing Tian Tung's displeased questioning, Lan Longhui's eyes immediately flashed with a trace of panic, and he quickly knelt down on one knee to apologize. "Elder Tian Tung, please don't misunderstand. Longhui definitely didn't mean that." Ignoring Lan Guanghui's apology, Tian Tung stood up and snorted coldly. He then said to the white-haired old man in blue robes coldly, "Great Elder, since you don't believe the results of my formula Tao calculations, then there's no point for me to continue to stay here. Then Tian Tung will take his leave. After cupping his hands at the old man in blue robes, Tian Tung directly reached out and tore the void in front of him. He then stepped into the void crack and disappeared from the Qing Hu mountain range. Slap! Just as the void that Tian Tung tore regained its calm, a crisp slap suddenly sounded in the silent scene. Great Elder, Long Hui knows that he was wrong. I hope Great Elder can be merciful and forgive Long Hui's sins. Not daring to care about his red and swollen cheeks, Long Hui immediately knelt down on both knees and begged bitterly while kowtowing hard. Ignoring the begging Long Hui, the white-haired old man in blue robes ordered the other 6 people immediately use the method of intertwining divine thoughts and thoroughly search the entire Qing Hu mountain range for me. You must find the murderer who killed the clan leader. Yes, Great Elder. Since no one came forward to ask for Long Hui's help, and no one even looked at Long Hui, the 6 powerhouses floating in the air cupped their hands in acknowledgement and immediately scattered in all directions. Then, they mobilized their divine senses to the limit and began to search the entire Qing Hu mountain range. Guanghui, you will now return to the clan to accept the punishment of being bitten by 10,000 snakes. I hope this can earn Tian Tang's forgiveness, and he won't pursue the sin of doubting him just now. After the 6 subordinates left, the white-haired old man in blue robes sighed softly and instructed Long Hui with a complicated expression. Thank you for your care, Great Elder. After hearing the punishment of being bitten by 10,000 snakes, Long Hui's face instantly turned as pale as paper. While kowtowing to express his gratitude, a trace of despair appeared in his eyes. The punishment of being bitten by 10,000 snakes was to seal one's cultivation, remove one's defensive magic weapon, and allow 10,000 snake-type exotic beasts of different levels to bite off a piece of flesh from one's body. Although he would not die even if he lost all of his physical body due to his peak second tribulation demigod realm, this punishment would completely deprive him of the hope of becoming a martial god in the future. Feng Run City. In the prince's mansion, Faling pointed at a water mirror condensed from mist in front of him and sneered with the corners of his mouth slightly raised. You, Howren, after seeing the behavior and humanity of the Lan family, now you know why I had to kill the clan leader of the Lan family. Looking at the pale-faced Long Hui in the water mirror with a look of despair in his eyes, Yu Howren could not help but sigh softly and nod his head. Then he raised his head and looked at the white-haired old man in blue robes with a trace of coldness in his eyes as he asked, Faling, how did a clan like this that has already lost its humanity survive the destruction of the Middle Ages and recent ancient times and continue to exist until today? The reason is very simple. Strength, snobbery, and viciousness. After waving his hand to disperse the water mirror in front of him, Faling replied with a cold smile. A special bloodline inheritance can allow the Lan family's strength to always be at its peak. Snobbish people who bully the weak and fear the strong can help them avoid the risk of being exterminated. The vicious style of cutting the weeds and eliminating the roots can ensure that they eliminate all potential dangers. Faling, a clan like this should not continue to exist in this world. Chapter 1740. In the prince's mansion in Fengrun City, strength, snobbery, and viciousness were not only the foundation for a family or sect to establish itself in the world, but also the key for every warrior who set foot on the path of martial arts. Just because the Lan family had done all 3 of these things to the extreme, it had provoked Yu Howren's desire to destroy them. This made the tower spirit realize that the situation was not quite right. After all, in addition to snobbery, he was not inferior to the Lan family in strength and viciousness. Therefore, taking advantage of the opportunity, when Yu Howren was refining the black and white wings with the yin-yang strange fire, Faling directly mobilized the 9 chaotic marks of the real victor, and then carefully checked the destiny energy in his body. Sure enough, when he found that the destiny energy, which was originally only gathered in his heart, had begun to spread in all directions. A look of understanding flashed in Thaling's eyes. Time was like flowing water, always passing through his fingertips without him noticing. More than a month had passed since Palace advanced to the peak of Emperor Wu's level 9 peak. Boom! On this day, Yu Haoran was sitting cross-legged in the practice room. With the help of a 6-colored void fruit and a space crystal containing pure energy, he was trying his best to comprehend the power of the law of South and the law of North. Suddenly, there was a deafening roar between heaven and earth. Accompanied by the deafening roar, the entire prince's mansion and foam-run city shook violently. Without any hesitation, Yu Haoran quickly put away the 6-colored void fruit and the space crystal and left the practice room in a flash. Then, he floated above the mansion and looked toward the northeast. Thaling, the roar just now. Does it mean that the tomb of Jinyun Great God has officially opened? That's right. Thaling, who had been paying attention to the situation of Xinyuanzi's tomb, nodded in confirmation and further explained. Yu Haoran, in fact, Xinyuanzi's own talent and opportunities were not inferior to those of Tongtian Supreme and Xingtian Supreme at that time. However, he had never become a supreme existence in the supreme realm, because too much of his energy was diverted by his erudition. Alchemy, crafting, poison, talisman, formula, and more than a dozen auxiliary cultivation systems. Not only did he have a certain degree of involvement in all of them, but he had also reached the level of proficiency in all of them. Therefore, in the tomb that he carefully prepared for himself, there were not only powerful offensive and defensive formations, but also countless traps that were set up to aid his cultivation. After listening to the Tower Spirit's further explanation, Yu Haoran nodded to indicate that he understood. At the same time, he used his divine thought to inform the Scarlet Loathing Beast and Yusiki, who were cultivating in the mansion. Follow me. When Palace and Yusiki came to his side, Yu Haoran nodded and led the two of them straight to the Huayu mountain range hundreds of thousands of kilometers away. The Huayu mountain range was located in the north of the eastern region, close to the North Sea. It was formed by 36 connected mountains. Due to the influence of the North Sea's climate, although the Huayu mountain range was rich in spiritual qi, the impurities contained in the spiritual qi were not suitable for absorption and cultivation improvement. As a result, not only were there no forces stationed in the Huayu mountain range, but there were also very few exotic beasts living in the mountain range. However, as a deafening roar suddenly came from the bottom of the mountain range, it completely broke the usual tranquility of the Huayun mountain range. Countless experts from the 5 major regions of the Tianxian continent landed at the edge of the mountain range. Of course, as the Huayu mountain range was located in the eastern region, at least half of the hundreds of experts who arrived at the edge of the mountain range were from the eastern region. Among them, the most eye-catching was Dongfang Huayun, who was wearing a veil on his face and standing on a white rock at the edge of the mountain range. Not only did Dongfang Huayun have a peerless appearance, but he was also the second powerful formation master in the Tianxian continent to break through to the formation emperor realm. Dong Mingji greets brother Zhixiang. Seeing Dongfang Huayun's eyes looking at the Huayun mountain range, there was a flash of surprise, shock, and doubt in his eyes. Countless experts who rushed over were eager to know what was going on in the Huayu mountain range. A middle-aged man in embroidered clothes who had a close relationship with Dongfang Zhixiang walked up to the white rock where Dongfang Huayun was standing. He cupped his hands and greeted Dongfang Zhixiang, who was standing beside Dongfang Huayun. "Oh, it's Brother Mingji." When he heard someone greet him, Dongfang Zhixiang stopped talking to Dongfang Huayun in a low voice and cupped fists in response with a smile. "Brother Zhixiang, the Huayu mountain range is not far from the Morning Sun Peak, where the Dongfang family is located. You and Miss Huayun are also the first to arrive at the edge of the mountain range. What do you think about the roar that was formed in the mountain range just now?" Dong Mingji asked immediately after Dongfang Zhixiang's reply. "Brother Mingji, although the Morning Sun Peak, where the Dongfang family is located, is only half an hour away from here, it's not like you don't know the real situation of the Huayu mountain range. How could we pay attention to it?" Dongfang Zhixiang explained with a bitter smile in response to Dong Mingji's question. But then, Dongfang Zhixiang put away the bitter smile on his face and continued with a serious expression. However, according to my daughter's peak formation Emperor Realm method, I found that the Huayu mountain range was shrouded and sealed by a powerful formation. Brother Zhixiang, what is the level of the formation? Can Miss Huayun break the seal of the formation? A formation that could shroud the entire mountain range not only required an extremely high level of formation skills, but also the assistance of countless heavenly materials and earthly treasures. On the other hand, the formation that used countless heavenly materials and earthly treasures to shroud and seal the entire mountain range was to hide the amazing treasure hidden in the mountain range. Therefore, Dong Mingji, who had countless thoughts flashing through his mind, continued to ask with a slightly excited expression. This, Dongfang Zhixiang, who did not have a high level of formation skills, did not know how to answer Dong Mingji's question. Fortunately, Dongfang Huayun, who had finished inspecting and sensing the formation, opened his eyes and took over the topic in a timely manner. Senior Dong, if Huayun's speculation is correct, the formation that sealed this mountain range should be the 5 elements and 5 elements formation that was created by Zhen Yuan in the Middle Ages. Hearing Dongfang Huayun point out that the formation that shrouded and sealed the entire mountain range was the 5 elements and 5 elements formation that was created by Zhen Yuan, who was at the peak of 9th grade martial god in the Middle Ages, everyone could not help but fall into deep thought. On a mountain peak about 100 miles away from the Huayun mountain range, Yu Haoran, with his hands behind his back, looked in the direction of the Huayu mountain range with a trace of surprise in his eyes. Yu Haoran, Dongfang Huayun's talent and comprehension and formation skills are the most outstanding among the countless formation geniuses that I have seen in Thaling. Thaling could not help but praise Dongfang Huayun, who was standing at the edge of the mountain range through the barrier of the sea of consciousness space. Chapter 1741. Yu Haoran quickly scanned Dongfang Huayun, who was standing on a white rock at the edge of the Huayu Mountains, and a complicated look appeared in his eyes. When she had decided to help the earthly venerable of the Yushu Temple to deal with him in the Osmanthus Mountains, he had given her a chance to explain using the teleportation talisman she had given him in the past. However, Dongfang Huayun had not taken the initiative to explain until the appearance of the ancient god and devil clans. This made him deeply disappointed, and at the same time, he had decided to draw a clear line with her. This was also one of the important reasons why he had stopped hundreds of miles away from the mountains. Thaling, what level is the 5 elements and 5 elements formation created by the great god Zhen Yuan? Ignoring Thaling's praise for Dongfang Huayun, Yu Haoran withdrew his attention and asked, Yu Haoran, the 5 elements and 5 elements formation has reached the peak of the divine level. It can be regarded as Zhen Yuan's proudest work. Thaling, who was very clear about the conflict between Yu Haoran and Dongfang Huayun, saw that Yu Haoran did not want to talk too much about them. So he quickly put away his inner sigh and began to introduce the level and power of the 5 elements and 5 elements formation in detail. The 5 elements and 5 elements formation takes the mystery of the 5 directions of east, west, north, south, and center and integrates a trace of the essence of the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. Finally, it achieves the terrifying power of collapsing heaven and earth and shifting the void within a small range. Thaling, can you and the second doppelganger crack the 5 elements and 5 element formation? Collapsing heaven and earth and shifting the void. After hearing the terrifying power of the 5 elements and 5 elements formation, Yu Haoran, who had been relatively relaxed, suddenly became nervous. Yu Haoran, if it was just a simple 5 elements and 5 elements formation, even without the help of the second doppelganger, it would only take 2 to 3 hours for me to completely crack it. After hearing Yu Haoran's nervous questioning, Thaling could not help but explain with a wry smile, shaking his head. However, Zhen Yuanzi, who is proficient in more than 10 auxiliary cultivation methods, has integrated many unpredictable traps into the array. The 5 elements and 5 elements formation spells might has already surpassed the scope of a god-level formation spell by far. With my current cultivation and power, I'm still unable to deal with a formation spell whose might has reached the sovereign level. Thawing, other than waiting for the formation to be fully activated, do you have any other way to sneak into the tomb? He stayed 100 miles away from Huayu mountain range because he didn't want to meet Dongfang Huayun, and also because he wanted to sneak into Grand Gaijin Yuan's tomb with the help of Thawing and his second doppelganger's attainments in the art of formations. Then, he could take the 3 primordial spirit treasures for himself. Now, the plan to quietly sneak into the tomb had been destroyed. Yu Haoran could only hope that Thawing had other means of entering the tomb. Otherwise, he would not be able to enjoy the opportunity of opening the tomb of great god, Zhen Yuan alone. No, ignoring Yu Haoran's gloomy face, Thawing shook his head and replied, "Unless I can recover my peak strength in a short period of time, you can only follow those people into the tomb through the opening of the formation." After hearing Thawing's reply, Yu Haoran couldn't help but roll his eyes. If the pagoda spirit strength could return to the peak of 9th grade supreme martial artist and reproduce the methods of the ancient supreme martial artist purple spirit, not to mention the 5 elements and 5 elements formation that sealed the great god Jin Yuan's tomb, it would be a piece of cake for the pagoda spirit to slaughter the 4 great guardian families and suppress the ancient god and demon clans again. In that case, he didn't need to waste time and effort to leave Xianyang City and open up a place in the eastern region where he could stay in the future. "Brother Yu, can we get close to the mountain range now?" Just when Yu Haoran had no choice but to accept the reality of entering the tomb through the opening of the formation, Palace, who had been thinking for a long time, finally couldn't help but ask, "Brother Qi, don't worry for the time being." Shaking his head at Palace, Yu Haoran looked to the southwest and explained with a trace of coldness in his eyes. Because the 5 elements and 5 elements formation in the mountain range hasn't been fully opened, the real powerhouse who could decide the final ownership of the 3 treasures in the mountain range hasn't really arrived. We need... Brother Yu, we must immediately rush to the edge of the mountain range. Suddenly interrupting Yu Haoran's reminder, Palace's eyes glowed red, and his expression was full of excitement. Because I have a very strong feeling in my heart that there is a heaven-defying opportunity in a mountain range that can help me become a divine beast and break away from the shackles of my ancestral bloodline. Although he didn't want to expose himself too early to avoid some unnecessary disputes, compared to Palace's opportunity to be reborn, Yu Haoran would rather face the annoying disputes. "Let's go." After making a decision in his heart, he turned his head and called out to Yusiki, then flew straight to the edge of the mountain range. "Miss Huayun, with your current formation ability, can you crack the 5 elements and 5 elements formation?" After a short period of recollection, Dong Mingji couldn't find any information about the 5 elements and 5 elements formation, so he immediately thought of cracking the formation on Dongfang Huayun. After all, among the thousands of powerhouses gathered at the scene, only Dongfang Huayun discovered the hidden formation in the mountain range. "Senior Dong, I can't do it alone, unless..." Shaking his head, Dongfang Huayun turned and looked to the southeast with a complicated look in his eyes. "Miss Huayun, unless what?" Seeing Dongfang Huayun's hesitation, Dong Mingji, who was eager to know the secret hidden in the mountain range, immediately asked, "Unless there is a formation emperor who has the same level of formation as me, maybe I have about a 30% chance of cracking the formation." Originally, Dongfang Huayun didn't want to pay attention to Dong Mingji's repeated questions. When he was about to withdraw his gaze, he unexpectedly saw 3 figures rushing over as fast as lightning, especially the familiar figure that she missed day and night, but her heart was full of resentment. After a strange idea flashed in Dongfang Huayun's mind, he explained with a smile. "This, among the known formation emperors in the Tianxin continent, besides Dongfang Huayun, there was only Yu Haoran in Xianyang City in the southern region. However, the Huayu mountain range was more than tens of millions of kilometers away from Xianyang City in the southern region. Even by tearing the void, it would take at least 3 days and 3 nights for a round trip. What's more, he had never met Yu Haoran before, and they didn't know each other. Yu Haoran might not accept his invitation and come all the way to the Huayu mountain range. Chapter 1742. Outside the Huayu mountain range. Dong Mingqi did not know how to respond to Dongfang Huayun's suggestion. Dongfang Zhixiang, who was also standing on a white rock, suddenly looked surprised. Then he jumped down from the rock and greeted with a smile on his face. Haha, I didn't expect the commotion caused by the Huayu mountain range to arouse your interest. Greetings, clan leader Dongfang. Yu Haoran quickly landed at the edge of the mountain range. He looked at the enthusiastic Dongfang Zhixiang and greeted him indifferently. Yu Haoran's indifferent attitude made Dongfang Zhixiang feel a little embarrassed. However, he thought that it was his daughter's fault and continued to greet him with a smile. Prince Consort, you've just arrived at the edge of the Huayu mountain range. Perhaps you don't know what's going on here. Let me give you a brief introduction. Thank you for the introduction, clan leader Dongfang. Although Yu Haoran already knew what Dongfang Zhixiang was talking about, Dongfang Zhixiang did not seem to mind or be displeased by his indifference. This made Yu Haoran feel a little embarrassed. After all, the person who really disappointed and displeased him was Dongfang Huayun. She had reached the peak of the formation emperor realm. Dongfang Zhixiang could no longer control her thoughts and actions. Therefore, when faced with Dongfang Zhixiang's passionate attitude, Yu Haoran's expression was still relatively gentle as he replied, Prince Consort, why don't you and my daughter work together to crack the 5 elements formation hidden in the mountain range? The change in Yu Haoran's attitude made Dongfang Zhixiang heave a sigh of relief and hurriedly make a suggestion. Ignoring Dongfang Zhixiang's suggestion, Yu Haoran turned to look at Palace, who was gradually calming down. Brother Qi, what do you want to do next? Brother Yu, what I need to do next is to use the call in my heart to increase my connection with the opportunities. As for when I'll be able to enter the tomb, I don't know yet. When he was far away from the mountain range, the calling from his heart was extremely intense. However, when he arrived at the edge of the mountain range, the calling gradually calmed down. This made Palace extremely anxious, and at the same time, he immediately calmed down and tried to sense the calling. All right. After agreeing with Palace's idea, Yu Haoran instructed Yusiki. Sister, I'll have to trouble you to protect Brother Qi. Nodding, Yusiki followed Palace to a withered pine tree at the edge of the mountain range. While guarding Palace, she continued to comprehend and cultivate the mantra of the Great Oblivion. Looking up at Dongfang Huayun, who was still standing on the white rock, the warmth in Yu Haoran's eyes was gradually replaced by indifference. The corner of his mouth was slightly raised as he asked, Dongfang Huayun, you just said that with the help of a formation emperor, you have a 30% chance of breaking the 5 elements and 5 elements formation. Sorry? That's right. Knowing that he didn't give Yu Haoran a chance to explain himself, Dongfang Huayun was very angry and disappointed. Therefore, in the face of Yu Haoran's indifference and slight disdain, he wasn't angry at all. He nodded and said confidently, Yu Shixiang, if your formation cultivation has also reached the peak of formation emperor, then I have a 50% chance of breaking the 5 elements and 5 elements formation. Huh. In the face of Dongfang Huayun's confident reply, Yu Haoran couldn't help but laugh to the sky. However, everyone present could hear that his laughter was full of sarcasm. Yu Shixiang, what do you mean? Dongfang Huayun stopped smiling and questioned with a slightly unhappy face. Dongfang Huayun, do you know the origin of the 5 elements and 5 element formation? As he suddenly stopped laughing, Yu Haoran took a step forward and asked. It was made by Zhen Yuan in the Middle Ages. Dongfang Huayun replied. Then do you know the true level of the 5 elements and 5 elements formation? Then, taking a step forward, Yu Haoran continued to ask. Early stage of the divine level. Dongfang Huayun replied confidently. Wrong. As he continued to take a step forward, Yu Haoran loudly denied Dongfang Huayun's answer just now. Then, he looked straight into her eyes and refuted. Zhen Yuan in the Middle Ages was already at the peak of the formation god realm. The formation he was most proud of in his life was the 5 elements and 5 elements formation, which was at the peak of the divine level. After hearing Yu Haoran's refutation, Dongfang Huayun's body trembled slightly, and her eyes revealed an extremely shocked expression. The 5 elements and the 5 elements and 5 elements formation refer to the mysteries of the laws in the 5 directions of east, south, west, and center. Then, they are respectively integrated with a trace of the essence of the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. Finally, it achieves the power of the collapse of heaven and earth within a small range and the displacement of space. Yu Haoran suddenly took 2 steps forward. When he was 3 meters away from the white rock where Dongfang Huayun stood, he asked loudly, "Dongfang Huayun, I don't know if you still have the courage to say that you have a 30% chance of dissolving the 5 elements and 5 elements formation." In the face of Yu Haoran's question, Dongfang Huayun's expression suddenly changed, and she looked at the Huayu mountain range. Her eyes revealed a look of sudden realization. No wonder she could only deduce the overlapping formation that contained the essence of the 5 elements in the formation and was unable to continue. It turned out that the grade and power of the 5 elements and 5 elements formation had long exceeded the limit of what she could deduce. After withdrawing her gaze from the Huayu mountain range, Dongfang Huayun calmly replied to Yu Haoran's question just now. "Yu Shixiang, I was careless for a moment. I didn't have a deep understanding of the essence of the 5 elements and 5 elements formation, which led to a mistake in the final judgment. So now Dongfang Huayun, was it just a moment of carelessness?" As he continued to take a step forward, Yu Haoran directly interrupted Dongfang Huayun's explanation. His eyes were full of contempt, and his words were full of ridicule. "But in my opinion, Yu Haoran's opinion, the breakthrough of the Formation Emperor realm has gradually made you arrogant and conceited. It has also made you more and more arrogant, and you have become more and more ignorant of the immensity of heaven and earth." "Yu Haoran, shut up." Yu Haoran's blatant mockery caused Dongfang Huayun to instantly fall into a state of rage. She shouted at the top of her lungs. Dongfang Huayun's overly violent reaction immediately attracted the attention of Thaling in the Sea of Consciousness. Through the barrier of the Sea of Consciousness, Thaling saw the angry eyes and a flash of cyan light from time to time. He understood why Dongfang Huayun helped the earthly venerable of the Yushu Temple and why Yu Haoran didn't explain it afterwards. Chapter 1743. At the edge of the Huayu mountain range, Dongfang Zhixiang saw that Dongfang Huayun's face was flushed red and that she was about to attack. Dongfang Zhixiang immediately stood in front of her. He first glared at her, then turned to ask Yu Haoran with a bitter smile, "Prince Consort, please show some mercy." The continuous questioning and ridicule just now had dissipated a lot of Yu Haoran's accumulated dissatisfaction with Dongfang Huayun. Therefore, he did not continue to mock and ridicule Dongfang Huayun. Seeing that Dongfang Huayun's eyes were full of anger, Yu Haoran sighed and turned to walk behind Palace. He guarded him while discussing with Thaling how they could successfully obtain the 3 treasures left behind by the great god Zhen Yuan. Turning his head to look at Dongfang Huayun, who was breathing unsteadily, Thaling thought about it carefully and decided not to reveal the reason for her change in personality to Yu Haoran before he was 100% sure. Then, according to his understanding of the great god Zhen Yuan and the 5 elements formation, he discussed with Yu Haoran the operation plan after the formation was fully activated. Seeing that Yu Haoran was standing at the edge of the mountain range, Dongfang Huayun's face was as gloomy as still water. Her eyes revealed a hint of struggle. After nearly 3 minutes, the struggle in her eyes was gradually replaced by determination. Then, she took a deep breath and sat cross-legged on the white rock under her feet. Her 10 fingers quickly formed a formation seal, planning to use an unsealing method that suddenly appeared in her memory to forcefully break the five elements formation and retaliate against Yuhauran's humiliation. It's really him. Thaling, who was discussing the plan with Yuhauran, immediately turned his head to look after sensing the fluctuation of the seal's aura. Then, a terrifying cold light flashed in his eyes. Could this be the legendary reverse 9 secret unsealing method that can break all formations in the world? Just as Thaling was about to remind Yuhauran to pay attention to Dongfang Huayun's unsealing method, a shocked voice suddenly came from the void at the edge of the Huayu mountain range. The shocked voice immediately attracted the attention of more than 2,000 powerhouses at the scene. Everyone's eyes immediately turned to the direction where the voice came from. After seeing the figure of a powerhouse gradually appearing, everyone's face instantly turned ugly. Because the powerhouse who pointed out the origin of Dongfang Huayun's unsealing method was not only a demigod powerhouse from the Black Tortoise clan, but there were also more than 100 people behind him, Emperor Wu and other demigods, who were also exuding an extremely powerful aura. Most of the powerhouses at the scene had heard about the origins of the 4 great guardian clans. The fact that they had sent so many powerhouses to fight for it was enough to prove that the Huayu mountain range that was sealed by the 5 elements and 5 elements formation must be hiding an unimaginable heaven-defying opportunity. At the same time, they also knew very well about the power and dominance of the 4 great guardian clans. They knew that the heaven-defying opportunity hidden in the Huayu mountain range was not fated to be with them. The news that the tomb of the great god Jin Yuan was hidden in the Huayu mountain range, and that there were 3 treasures in the tomb must have been known by the dozen or so top forces in the Tianxin continent. Therefore, Yuhauran was not surprised at the arrival of the 4 great guardian clans. He turned around and looked at Dongfang Huayun, who was sitting cross-legged on the white rock. Miss Huayun, was the unsealing method that you used just now the reverse 9 moves that your ancestor Dongfang Ming created? Without paying attention to the changes in everyone's expression, the formation powerhouse from the Black Tortoise clan appeared beside the white rock in a flash and asked excitedly, Thaling, what is the unsealing method of the reverse 9 moves? Hearing the formation powerhouse from the Black Tortoise clan asking about Dongfang Huayun, Yuhauran carefully thought for a while and realized that he had never heard of this kind of unsealing method in either his previous life or his current life. Therefore, he could only ask for help from Thaling in his spiritual sea. Yuhauran, do you still remember Gay Guzi, whom I introduced to you when you entered the Merlin Mountain Range before the start of the Hidden Dragon ranking competition of the 5 regions in the Central Region? Thaling didn't immediately explain the origin and function of the reverse 9 moves. Instead, he changed the topic to accepting the Qian family's invitation and venturing into the Merlin Mountain Range. Yuhauran, who was familiar with Thaling's personality, knew that he wouldn't mention Gui Guzi and the Merlin Mountain Range for no reason. Therefore, he didn't mind at all and nodded hurriedly. Of course I remember. Yuhauran, then do you still remember the 7 inherited disciples of Gui Guzi? Thaling continued asking. The most powerful one was Xingtian Supreme, Supreme Meng Sheng, who was second only to Lao Tzu in the art of alchemy, Supreme Tongtian, who was second only to Yun Zhongzi in the art of magic formation, Old Man Fu Sheng, who was the most powerful one in the art of talisman, Supreme Void, who was the most powerful one in the art of magic formation, Supreme Mind, who was the most powerful one in the art of magic formation, and Supreme Poison Source, who was the most powerful one in the art of poison. Thinking of the 7 inherited disciples cultivated by Gui Guzi, each of whom had achieved amazing achievements, Yuhauran responded with a sigh. 7 top-grade supreme powerful ones. How could I possibly forget them? Seeing that Yuhauran clearly remembered the 7 inherited disciples of Gui Guzi, Thaling took a deep breath and said word by word. Yuhauran, the ancestor of the Dongfang family, was named Dongfang Ming, who was nicknamed the Original Void. The reverse 9 moves is a secret unsealing method created by him with his own understanding of magic formations. It can unseal all magic formations in the world. What? the ancestor of the Dongfang family, is the original void. When he heard the shocking secret revealed by Thaling, Yu Haoran could not help but tremble slightly, and his face revealed a look of disbelief. Fortunately, his back was facing the crowd now, so no one noticed his shock just now. That's right. While nodding to confirm, Thaling further explained. In fact, not to mention that the world doesn't know the bloodline relationship between the two, even the direct descendants of the Dongfang family probably don't know the true identity of their ancestor. Thaling, why is that? Yu Haoran asked in confusion. I'm not very clear about the specific reason. Shaking his head, Thaling looked through the barrier of the sea of consciousness and looked at Dongfang Huayun, who was sitting cross-legged on the white rock, and explained with a trace of confusion in his eyes. Back then, because of the philosophy of martial arts, there was a very tragic bloody battle between Prime Tong Tian and the illusory original void. The result of the bloody battle was that Prime Tong Tian was severely injured by the starfall formation laid down by the illusory Prime Yuanshi, and the illusory Prime Yuanshi's heart was shattered by Prime Tong Tian's Heaven Punishment Strike. And as a good friend of Prime Tong Tian, I once used the secret method of the illusory body of the illusory original void to help and accidentally obtained a small piece of the broken heart of the illusory original void. Chapter 1744. At the edge of the Huayu mountain range. That's right. Dongfang Huayun's jade-like fingers that were rapidly forming seals paused for a moment. He turned his head and glanced at the Black Tortoise Clan's formation powerhouse. He nodded with a gentle expression and confirmed. The unsealing technique that I just used is the 9 styles of reversal created by my ancestor, Dongfang Ming. After receiving confirmation from Dongfang Huayun, the Black Tortoise Clan's formation powerhouse's face immediately flashed with a hint of surprise. He then quickly turned his head and nodded at the other 3 powerhouses standing in the void. Subsequently, the Blue Dragon, the White Tiger, and the Vermilion Bird Clan's 3 strongest powerhouses appeared beside the White Rock in a flash. After a brief spiritual communication with the Blue Dragon, the White Tiger, and the Vermilion Bird Clan's 3 strongest powerhouses, the Black Tortoise Clan's formation powerhouse cupped his hands and proposed to Dongfang Huayun. Miss Huayun, if you don't mind, after you unseal the 5 elements and 5 elements formation in the Huayu mountain range, you can choose to cooperate with our 4 great guardian clans to unearth the secrets of the Huayu mountain range together. After hearing the Black Tortoise Clan's formation powerhouse's suggestion, many powerhouses present immediately revealed looks of envy and jealousy in their eyes. Even Dongfang Zhixiang's eyes revealed a hint of interest. After all, everyone present knew about the strength of the 4 great guardian clans. To be able to obtain protection from the 4 great guardian clans, the heaven-defying opportunities in the Huayu mountain range could be said to be within reach. After turning his head and glancing at Yu Haoran, who was paying attention to him, Dongfang Huayun's eyes flashed with a hint of pride. He nodded at the Black Tortoise Clan's formation powerhouse and stated his conditions. 80-20. The 4 great guardian clans will take 80% of the harvest in the Huayu mountain range, and the Dongfang clan will take 20%. After hearing Dongfang Huayun's request, the Black Tortoise Clan's formation powerhouse nodded in agreement. All right, let's do it according to Miss Huayun's 82 split. Hearing about the cooperation agreement between the Xuanwu clan and Dongfang Huayun, Yu Haoran, who was extremely unhappy, immediately suppressed the shock of the bloodline inheritance between the Dongfang clan and the illusory primeval supremacy. He immediately asked the Thaling in the Sea of Consciousness whether the 9 reverse moves unsealing method created by the illusory primeval supremacy could break the 5 elements formation set up by the immortal Jin Yuan. Yu Haoran, don't worry. Facing Yu Haoran's worry, Thaling immediately smiled and comforted him. Unless the illusory primeval supremacy personally takes action with Dongfang Huayun's current formation realm, even if she's given 10 or 8 years, she will not be able to break the 5 elements formation modified by Xin Yuanzi with the 9 reverse moves unsealing method. After hearing Thaling's assurance, Yu Haoran secretly breathed a sigh of relief. At the same time, he looked at Dongfang Huaiyun with a trace of disdain and ridicule. At the same time, Dongfang Huaiyun, who was able to reach a cooperation agreement with the four great guardian clans, looked at Yu Haoran with a complacent look in his eyes. After seeing the trace of ridicule in Yu Haoran's eyes, Dongfang Huaiyun, who was instantly enraged, immediately sped up the speed of making gestures with his 10 fingers. He intended to use the result of breaking the 5 elements formation in a short time to slap Yu Haoran in the face. Yu Haoran, no one knows how many traps Xinyuanzi has integrated into the 5 elements formation, and no one knows whether the 9 reverse moves unsealing method performed by Dongfang Huaiyun will trigger those traps. After comforting him, Thouling suddenly thought of Xinyuanzi's insidious and cunning nature, so he quickly suggested to Yu Haoran, "So, for the sake of safety, I think you'd better take Siki and Palace away from the edge of the mountain range. Brother Qi, can you temporarily stop the intercall?" Just as Thouling made the suggestion, Yu Haoran's sixth sense also sent a warning, which made his face change slightly. He immediately used his divine thoughts to interrupt Palace's process of sensing the intercall. Yes, no matter how hard he tried to sense, he could not increase the connection with the treasure in the mountain range. So, even without Yu Haoran's interruption, he decided to give up sensing. "Brother Qi, there may be some changes in the 5 elements and 5 elements formation. It's best for us to immediately leave the edge of the mountain range to avoid an unexpected disaster." After receiving the Scarlet Lotus reply, Yu Haoran was overjoyed and immediately reminded. "Okay." Palace nodded in response, and directly stopped his practice and stood up. Ignoring the puzzled eyes of the people on the scene, Yu Haoran took Palace and Yu Siki directly away from the edge of the Huayu mountain range, and then quietly observed the changes in the Huayu mountain range. As Dongfang Huaiyun increased the speed of his 10 fingers forming seals, white fog gradually emerged from the originally calm Huayu mountain range. As the white mist that surged out from the mountain range became denser and denser, the 36 connected mountain peaks gradually began to move. This caused the 4 strongest experts from the 4 protector clans and the 3,000 experts present to reveal expressions of pleasant surprise in their eyes. After all, the 4 guardian family's experts had not officially started to drive the people on the scene away. As long as they rushed directly into the Huayu mountain range the moment the formation was lifted, no matter what kind of heaven-defying opportunity they obtained, the 4 guardian family's experts would not say anything. Roar! Just as the people on the scene were looking forward to Dongfang Huaiyun successfully lifting the 5 elements formation, 5 deafening dragon roars suddenly came from the thick white fog of the Huayu mountain range. After hearing the dragon roars, most of the experts on the scene looked directly at the most powerful person from the Blue Dragon clan. The 5 elemental dragons condensed from the 5 elements have reached the level of a 3rd tribulation demigod. Carefully listening to the dragon roars coming from the fog of the mountain range, the Blue Dragon clan expert said with a slightly serious expression, "Miss Huayan, what's going on?" Although the 5 elemental dragons that had reached the level of a 3rd tribulation demigod would not pose any threat to the 4 guardian families, it was obviously a little different from the usual situation of breaking a formation. Therefore, the formation expert from the Black Tortoise clan could not help but frown and ask. The 5 elements formation intercepts the mystery of the 5 directions in the north, south, east, west, west, and then integrates a trace of the essence of the 5 elements. Finally, it can perfectly seal an independent space. In the face of the Black Tortoise clan's formation expert's interrogation, Dongfang Huaiyun, whose expression did not change at all, replied confidently according to Yu Haoran's introduction of the 5 elements formation and her harvest from the process of breaking it. Chapter 1745. At the edge of the Huayu mountain range. Roar! Just as Dongfang Huaiyun made a solemn promise, the 5 elemental dragons in the white mist in the Huayu mountain range roared at the sky at the same time. Accompanied by the deafening roar, the 5 elemental dragons, whose bodies were more than tens of thousands of meters long, rushed out of the Huayu mountain range as fast as lightning, and then directly attacked the thousands of experts gathered at the edge of the mountain range. Most of the thousands of experts gathered at the edge of the mountain range were from the East region. They were the first to arrive at the Huayu mountain range because of their geographical advantage, not because of how powerful they were. Hence, in the face of the 5 elemental WIRMs that were at the third tribulation demigod realm, countless martial sages, martial venerables, and martial emperor powerhouses screamed and died under the attacks of the elemental WIRMs. Perhaps it was because the 4 guardian families had the largest number of powerhouses and the strength they displayed was the strongest. The 5 elemental dragons, the metal elemental dragon, the fire elemental dragon, and the water elemental dragon, roared like thunder as they charged towards the powerhouses of the guardian families floating in midair. Miss Huayan, what's going on? Looking at the 3 elemental dragons fighting with his clansmen, the strongest expert from the White Tiger clan questioned with an unfriendly look. Dongfang Huiyun, who had a puzzled look in his eyes, shook his head, indicating that he did not know what was going on, and continued to speed up the formation of the unsealing method. She hoped to use the unsealing method to reverse the 9 tests to break the 5 elements formation as soon as possible, so as to eliminate the misunderstanding of the 4 guardian families' strongest experts, compared to the thousands of experts of the East region who were mercilessly slaughtered in the face of the 3 elemental dragons of the third tribulation demigod realm. The 100 Emperor Wu realm and the demigod experts of the 4 guardian families used skillful joint attack techniques to easily kill the 3 elemental dragons without any casualties. This also shocked the experts of the East region who were desperately trying to avoid the pursuit of the elemental dragons. And at the same time, their eyes were full of desire, hoping that the experts of the guardian families could help them. However, what made them feel extremely disappointed was that the experts of the 4 protector clans only watched on indifferently. They had no intention of lending a helping hand at all. Perhaps it was because the powerhouses of the White Tiger clan had killed the 3 elemental WIRMs without suffering any casualties. But the expression of the strongest powerhouse from the White Tiger clan gradually softened, and he no longer questioned Dongfang Huayan. Screech! But at this time, from the white mist in the mountain range, a phoenix cry suddenly resounded through the clouds. A divine phoenix condensed from the essence of the 5 elements. After hearing the pure phoenix cry that came from the white mist, the strongest expert of the Vermilion Bird clan, as well as the only white-haired old woman, introduced with a relatively calm expression. As soon as the white-haired old woman finished her introduction, 5 prideful divine phoenixes that were close to 10,000 meters tall raised their heads and let loose cries into the sky as they flapped their wings and rushed out of the white mist like lightning. On one hand, the 2 elemental WIRMs and the remaining dozens of demigod experts of the East region were evenly matched in the battle. On the other hand, there were 100 experts of the guardian families who were quietly floating in the air and watching by the side. Therefore, the 5 divine phoenixes that rushed out of the white mist were instinctively controlled by the formation and rushed towards the experts of the guardian families with low cries. Kill! In the face of the 5 divine phoenixes that were rushing towards them, the experts of the guardian families did not panic at all. Instead, they quickly formed a joint attack to meet them. In less than 3 minutes, they easily killed the 5 divine phoenixes that had reached the level of third tribulation demigod without any casualties. Amazing! After seeing the 100 powerhouses of the guardian families easily kill the elemental WIRM and divine elemental phoenix in the third tribulation demigod realm through their skillful joint attack, Yu Haoran couldn't help but praise them sincerely. This was because other than the 4 strongest experts around Dongfang Huiyun, who were third tribulation demigod experts, among the 100 experts who fought the elemental WIRMs and divine elemental phoenixes, the highest cultivation base was only at the level of second tribulation demigod. There were only 16 of them. Most of the remaining experts were First Tribulation demigods and Emperor Wu, who were at the peak of Ninth Tribulation demigod realm. Their strength was not much different from the experts of the East region. In the case of similar strength, one side was crazily slaughtered while the other side easily killed their opponents. This not only showed the strength of the joint attack of the Guardian families, but also the strength of the Guardian family's inherited bloodline. Fouling, it seems that we have met a real opponent in the process of seizing the treasures this time. After praising from the bottom of his heart, Yuhaoran also began to worry about the upcoming operation of seizing the 3 treasures. After all, with his current strength, even if he cooperated with the Celestial Trapping Sword and the Celestial Eliminating Sword, he could only exert the strength of a First Tribulation demigod at most. Yuhaoran, don't worry. These 100 experts of the Guardian families will not affect our upcoming operation of seizing the treasures. Fouling comforted with a smile after hearing Yuhaoran's worries. Why? Yuhaoran asked in confusion. Because the elemental WIRMS and divine elemental phoenixes are only appetizers of the 5 elements and 5 elements formation. As long as Dongfang Huayun does not stop using the 9 styles of reversal to break the formation, the 5 elements and 5 elements formation will continuously condense stronger and more powerful opponents. In the face of Yuhaoran's questioning, Fouling explained confidently as he looked through the barrier of the sea of consciousness space and looked at the mountain range shrouded in white fog. No matter how powerful the joint attack of the 4 Guardian families is, it is limited by their own cultivation and strength. There will definitely be casualties in the end. As for the outcome of the casualties, it will depend on when the experts of the Black Tortoise Clan's formation can stop Dongfang Huayun from using the unsealing technique. Boom! Just as Fouling finished his explanation, Yuhaoran felt the ground under his feet suddenly begin to shake. He quickly looked up at the white fog shrouding the mountain range. Accompanied by the violent shaking of the ground, 5 towering giants that were nearly 10,000 meters tall slowly walked out of the white fog. Although the 5 towering giants' cultivation was also at the 3rd Tribulation demigod realm, the pressure that they brought to everyone was far greater than that of the elemental WIRMS and divine elemental phoenixes. This also made the 4 strongest experts of the Guardian families change their expressions slightly. Fouling, what's going on? Just as the 5 towering giants stepped out of the white fog, Yuhaoran discovered that the ancestral witch bloodline in his body had suddenly started to boil uncontrollably. He could not help but ask in shock, "What is it?" After indicating to Yuhaoran that there was no need to be nervous, Fouling explained with a hint of excitement. Chapter 1746. At the edge of the Huayu mountain range, Yuhaoran, who had inherited the memories of the 12 strongest ancestral wizards, was very clear about the ultimate fate of the ancient ancestral wizards. Therefore, he was very puzzled that Zenyuanzi, who was born in the Middle Ancient times, could find 5 ancestral wizards with pure bloodline. Yuhaoran, what's the strongest skill of the ancient ancestral wizards? Fouling did not immediately answer Yuhaoran's doubts, but asked with a smile. Of course, it's the physical body. Yuhaoran replied without hesitation. What's the martial god realm? Fouling continued to ask. See through the mystery of life and death, and enjoy the way of immortality. Yuhaoran continued to answer patiently. What's the way of immortality? As long as the physical body is not destroyed, the divine soul is not destroyed. If the divine soul is destroyed, can the physical body be preserved forever? If it's preserved properly, of course. As for Fouling's 4th question, Yuhaoran only answered half of it before falling silent. This was because he already knew what Fouling wanted to express, and he was even more clear about the origin of the 5 ancestral wizard puppets. The great war of witches and demons in the ancient times lasted for more than hundreds of years, during which countless ancestral wizards and demons died. It was not impossible for some forces and experts who coveted the powerful physical body of the ancestral wizard to secretly steal a part of the ancestral wizard's corpse. Therefore, Xinyuanzi was very likely to have obtained the 5 ancestral wizard corpses from those forces and experts who had escaped the destruction of the ancient times and refined them into powerful puppets to guard the cemetery. The 5 ancestral wizard puppets, who had stepped out of the white fog, were also instinctively controlled by the formation. They ignored the experts of the East region who were gradually gaining the upper hand and directly charged toward the 100 experts of the Guardian families who were still floating in the air. Seeing the 5 towering giants charging toward them, the 16-second tribulation demigods of the Guardian families changed their expressions slightly. They quickly took out their natal celestial devices and called their companions behind them to initiate the attack. Although the strength of the 5 ancestral Magus puppets was only at the level of a 3rd tribulation demigod, their bodies were genuine martial gods, and they had been carefully modified by the puppetry art. The defensive power of their bodies had already reached the level of a middle-grade divine artifact. Therefore, the 5 ancestral wizard puppets completely ignored the joint attack technique of the experts of the Guardian families and directly waved their palms that could cover the sky and slapped the 100 experts of the Guardian families. Boom! With a deafening boom, the combined attacks of the 100 experts from the Protector clans landed heavily on the 5 puppets. In the end, the puppets of the Guardians of the Gods and Demons of the puppets of the demigod warriors of the demigod of the puppets demigods. After that, the 2 of them took out 2 God Realm superior grade swords respectively, and then charged toward the 5 ancestral wizard puppets with murderous intent. Although the God Realm superior grade swords could break through the physical defense of the 5 ancestral wizard puppets, in the face of a huge body that was almost 10,000 meters long, 3 to 5 sword attacks could not directly destroy the core of the ancestral wizard puppets. Therefore, after Blue Dragon and the 2 strongest experts of the White Tiger clan tried their best to kill the 5 ancestral wizard puppets, there were only 16 second tribulation demigod realm experts left among the 100 experts of the Guardian families. Sister, Brother Chi, protect me. Just as Blue Dragon and the 2 strongest experts of the White Tiger clan successfully destroyed the core of the first ancestral wizard puppet, the physical body of the ancestral wizard puppet that was instantly freed from the control of the puppet technique began to wither rapidly and finally turned into a pile of white powder that drifted in the wind. However, the remaining blood in the ancestral wizard puppet's physical body appeared in Yu Haoran's body out of thin air due to the connection between the bloodlines. Even if the blood of the martial god realm ancestral wizard puppet had lost more than half of its essence as time passed, the remaining small amount of essence energy was still an unimaginable amount of energy to Yu Haoran, who was only at the beginning of the 9th grade of the Emperor Wu realm. Feeling the ancestral wizard bloodline in his body boiling, and feeling the ancestral wizard puppet's physical body burning, Yu Haoran knew that the opportunity for his cultivation and strength to advance by leaps and bounds had arrived. Therefore, while he informed Thaling to quickly set up a defensive formation to conceal his aura, he also instructed Yu Siki and Pallas to protect him. After that, he bent his knees and sat down cross-legged, and then circulated the heavenly mandate mental cultivation method to absorb the blood essence of the martial god realm ancestral wizard puppet. It had been more than 2 months since he had returned to Foam Run City. In these 2 months, other than accompanying Pallas to break through the peak of the 9th grade of the Emperor realm and secretly guarding the left army 3 times, he had spent the rest of his time on improving his cultivation and strength. In these 2 months, with the help of the yin-yang mystical fire, he had refined a large amount of black and white wings. His mental state cultivation, physical body grade, elemental energy, and soul power had all successfully advanced to the beginning of the 9th grade of the Emperor Wu realm. At the same time, he still had not sensed the limit of his accumulation. Therefore, when he felt that the ancestral wizard puppet's blood essence still contained an unimaginable amount of pure energy through the heavenly mandate mantra, Yu Haoran's first thought was to use it to improve the grade of his physical body. At the same time, he had an even greater ambition, and that was to use the blood essence of the 5 martial god realm ancestral wizard puppets to break through the complete 10th grade of the Emperor Wu realm. As the pure energy contained in the blood essence quickly merged with his physical body, the grade of his physical body began to increase rapidly. In a short 2 minutes, his physical body had successfully advanced to the middle of the 9th grade of the Emperor Wu realm. In a short 5 minutes, his physical body had successfully advanced to the high stage of the 9th grade of the Emperor Wu realm. In a short 10 minutes, his physical body had successfully advanced to the peak of the 9th grade of the Emperor Wu realm. However, when he began to prepare to break through to the complete 10th grade of the physical body, he suddenly felt his elemental energy and soul power boiling, and his mental state cultivation fluctuating. Without any hesitation, Yu Haoran immediately stopped breaking through to the next grade of the physical body, and couldn't help but sigh softly. This was because he knew that his accumulation had reached the peak, which also meant that his potential had been stimulated to the limit. Before his cultivation broke through to the Emperor Wu realm, his physical body grade couldn't directly break through to the complete 10th grade of the Emperor Wu realm. Although this result made Yu Haoran a little disappointed, the experience of 2 lifetimes and the strong mental state cultivation allowed him to quickly adjust his state of mind. After that, he began to use the pure energy contained in the blood essence to improve his mental state cultivation, elemental energy, and soul power. Chapter 1747. At the edge of the Huayu mountain range. Fortunately, the Black Tortoise Clan's formation master blocked it in time, allowing Dongfeng Huayun, who was as pale as a sheet, to escape. It was precisely because she felt the undisguised, killing intent of the White Tiger Clan's strongest that Dongfeng Huayun knew that she had been completely forced into a desperate situation. If she could break the 5 elements formation in the shortest time possible, she might still be able to obtain the forgiveness of the 4 Guardian Clan's strongest, and thus save her own life. However, if she failed to break the formation, then not only would she die today, but she would also implicate the Dongfeng clan behind her and become the center of the clan's defeat. Thinking of this, Dongfeng Huayun suddenly stood up, then bit the tip of her tongue and spat out 3 mouthfuls of blood essence. She directly used her blood essence to increase the power of the reverse 9 styles unsealing technique, speeding up the power and speed of breaking the 5-element formation. Dongfeng Huayun's method of cutting off all means of retreat temporarily calmed the anger of the 4 Guardian Clan strongest. However, what Dongfeng Huayun did not know was that her method of cutting off all means of retreat was completely suicidal. As Dongfeng Huayun used her blood essence to increase the power of the reverse 9 styles unsealing technique, the 5 elements formation that sealed the Huayu mountain range was being broken faster and faster. At the same time, more and more traps were being triggered and activated. GAGA. Just as the 5 elements formation was activated to 1/5 of its extent, a strange sound that made one's scalp tingle suddenly came from the increasingly dense white fog. Even though Thowling's spirit body was at the peak of the Supreme Being realm, the strange sound that came from the white fog made his heart tremble with a familiar feeling. The familiar tremble instantly opened the sealed memory of the previous device spirit. This allowed Thowling not only to know the true origin of the strange sound, but also to be more aware of the strength and horror of the sound itself. Therefore, he had to forcibly interrupt Yu Haoran, who was using the ancestral witch's blood essence to increase his realm and strength, and remind him to leave quickly. Yu Haoran, get out of here now! That strange cry just now came from a nether spirit beast that feeds on the flesh and souls of living creatures. Although he didn't know where the underworld spirit beast came from, the fact that it could make Thowling panic was enough to show how powerful and terrifying it was. Therefore, Yu Haoran did not hesitate at all. After forcefully suppressing the churning blood essence in his body, he directly tore open the void behind him. However, just as he stepped into the crack in space, he could not help but turn his head and warn Dongfeng Huayun out of the slightest bit of guilt he felt towards him. Dongfeng Huayun, if you want to end this disaster, you'd better stop using the reverse 9 styles unsealing technique immediately. Otherwise, not only will you die, but your father, everyone at the edge of the mountain range, and the experts hidden in the void will also die. After giving a loud warning, Howren stepped into the spatial crack and appeared at the peak of a mountain 50 kilometers away. Thowling, help me keep an eye on the situation of the mountain range. Sitting cross-legged on a green rock at the peak, Howren continued to use the essence of the ancestral wizard's blood to improve his realm and strength. At the same time, he also warned Thowling, Siki, and Palace. Sister, Brother Chi, continue to protect me. Howren's loud warning made Dongfang Huayun's 10 fingers that were using the unsealing technique pause for a moment, and a look of hesitation and struggle appeared in his eyes. However, when a green light replaced his hesitation and struggle, his 10 fingers continued to use the reverse 9 styles unsealing technique. However, the 4 most powerful experts of the Guardian families and the experts from the East region who had successfully dealt with the 2 elemental WRMS did not pay attention to Dongfang Huayun, who was continuing to use the unsealing technique, nor did they pay attention to the strange cries in the white fog. Instead, they directly mobilized their peak divine senses and began to search for the people hidden in the void that Howren had mentioned. In fact, not to mention the experts at the edge of the mountain range. Even Thowling could not help but use his peak 3rd tribulation demigod realm divine senses and Victor's origin energy to search for the people hidden in the void. However, the result was exactly the same as the Guardian families and the experts from the East region. They did not find anything. Thowling could not help but start to worry that Howren, who had experienced the opportunity of obtaining the essence of the ancestral wizard's blood in the martial god realm, had begun to surpass him in all aspects. The more worried he was, the more he could not help but fantasize that no matter what Howren did in the future, he would not need his help, nor would he need to continue discussing with him. The more he fantasized, the heavier the worry in his heart. In the end, when the worry in his heart reached its limit, Thowling could not help but interrupt Howren's breakthrough and directly ask him how he had discovered the experts hidden in the void. Fortunately, it was only to assist in the breakthrough of the realm, so the temporary interruption did not have much of an impact. Therefore, Howren did not feel any dissatisfaction because of Thowling's interruption. Instead, he smiled and responded to his question. Thowling, even you, a 3rd tribulation demigod realm sovereign weapon spirit, could not determine whether there were people hidden in the void. How could I, whose cultivation and strength are far inferior to yours, discover them? That was just a casual remark I made on the spur of the moment. Really? Thowling asked in disbelief. It's absolutely true. Howren hurriedly guaranteed. According to Zhongli Shuiqin's introduction of the 5 great hidden inheritance families, he knew that the 5 great hidden inheritance families were not inferior to the 4 great guardian families in terms of foundation and ambition. Since the 4 great guardian families knew the secret hidden in the Huayu mountain range, there was no reason for the 5 great hidden inheritance families not to know. Therefore, what seemed to be a casual remark on the spur of the moment was actually part of his speculation and bluff. He hoped that there would be unexpected gains. After receiving Howren's assurance, Thowling was finally relieved and continued to pay attention to the situation at the edge of the mountain range. Dongfang Huayun, who did not listen to Howren's warning, continued to use the 9 styles of reversal to forcibly break the 5 elements and 5 elements formation. This caused the strange cries in the white fog to become louder and louder, and gradually made the people at the scene panic. No, this place is too dangerous. I'll leave first. Affected by the panic, a 1st tribulation demigod expert from a family in the East region finally decided to give up the opportunity in the mountain range. However, just as he was about to rise into the air and leave, a faint shadow flew out of the white fog and arrived directly behind the 1st tribulation demigod expert at a speed close to teleportation. The demigod expert's instinct made him activate his defensive magic weapon and turn around to launch a punch that included the power of law. Chapter 1748. at the edge of the Huayu mountain range. The expected fierce battle did not happen. The faint shadow penetrated the fist attack at a very strange speed and stuck to the opponent's chest. Then, it ignored the defense of the upper-grade martial emperor magic artifact and merged into the opponent's body. There was no struggle or scream. In less than a second, the false god expert of the First Tribulation demigod realm turned into a dry piece of human skin. Looking at the human skin floating in the wind, a trace of reminiscence appeared in the eyes of the Black Tortoise clan's formation master. When he saw a body that looked like a snail without a shell slowly emerge from the falling human skin, his memories were immediately replaced by fear as he cried out involuntarily. This is one of the main culprits of the destruction of the ancient times. It can devour the flesh and divine soul of living creatures in an instant. The Nether Soul Beast. Hearing the formation expert from the Black Tortoise clan, the Blue Dragon, the White Tiger, and the Vermilion Bird clans' expressions changed. At the same time, they appeared in front of the 16 clansmen and took out a flag array embroidered with their clan's logo. Turning his head to look at Dongfang Huayun, who was still frantically trying to unseal the seal, the formation expert from the Black Tortoise clan could not help but sigh softly. Then, he returned to his clansmen and took out a flag array embroidered with the Black Tortoise logo. Then, he quickly formed a seal with his 10 fingers. Using 4 upper-grade Divine Realm flag arrays as the base, he quickly set up a Divine level defense formation. GAGA. Just as the formation expert from the Black Tortoise clan was using the flag array to set up a Divine level defense formation, the Nether Soul Beast floating in the air laughed strangely and looked directly at Dongfang Huayun, who was standing on the white rock with its evil eyes. Although Dongfang Huayun had used all his strength to unseal the seal, it did not mean that he had completely ignored the situation around him. She had also seen the entire process of a Nether Soul Beast devouring the First Tribulation demigod expert. Therefore, when she felt the Nether Soul Beast's attention on her, she immediately became nervous. Being nervous would cause one to lose focus. As a result of being distracted, the speed at which it executed the reverse 9 styles unsealing technique slowed down. This caused a trace of anxiety to faintly flash through the Nether Soul Beast's eyes that were filled with evil. Then, its gaze quickly shifted from Dongfang Huayun to the gathered experts of the Eastern region. Everyone, run for your lives. When a Second Tribulation demigod powerhouse saw the underworld spirit beast looking at them like a starving beast looking at a delicious meal, he felt a sense of fear and immediately suggested with malicious intent. If the remaining 40 or so experts of Emperor Wu were included, the total number of experts from the Eastern region who had gathered here was 116. If everyone fled in different directions, only one person would be devoured by the Nether Soul Beast, while the others would be able to preserve their lives. As for who would be unlucky enough to be chosen by the Nether Soul Beast, that was up to fate. After hearing the Second Tribulation demigod powerhouse's suggestion, everyone present nodded in agreement. However, no one wanted to be the first to attract the attention of the Nether Soul Beast. As a result, after 1 minute of the suggestion, everyone still remained where they were. This made the Second Tribulation demigod powerhouse who had just made the suggestion look gloomy. Quack, quack. As if it could understand the thoughts of the people present, the Nether Soul Beast made a few strange sounds complacently. It did not attack the people present. Instead, it raised its head and looked at the void above Huayu Mountain. A trace of disdain flashed through its evil eyes. Facing the evil gaze of the Nether Soul Beast, the originally calm void suddenly rippled with layers of waves. Then, 13 figures of various ages, dressed in light blue and dark blue robes, quickly emerged from the void and looked at the Nether Soul Beast nervously. The Lawn family, one of the 5 hidden families of inheritance. Looking at the 13 experts in blue robes emerging from the void, the strongest powerhouse of the Blue Dragon family, who was enveloped by the formation, pointed out with gritted teeth. Following the appearance of the Lawn family experts, the nether soul beast's gaze slowly shifted to another direction in the void. Along with layers of ripples in the void, 9 figures in gorgeous brocade robes with arrogant temperaments emerged. The Shangwan family, one of the 5 hidden families of inheritance. Facing the second group of 9 experts emerging from the void, an even angrier voice came from the Guardian family. Quack, quack! When its gaze shifted from the 9 experts of the Shangwan family to the third direction in the void, the nether soul beast suddenly made a few strange sounds. However, the scarlet color in its small eyes showed that it was very dissatisfied with those experts who had to be forced to show up from hiding in the void. As if sensing the nether soul beast's dissatisfaction, layers of ripples appeared in the void above Huayu Mountain at the same time in 3 locations. Accompanied by layers of ripples in the void, 11 figures with elegant auras, 7 figures in green robes, and 3 white-haired old men in gray robes appeared in 3 different positions. The Kong family, the Zhongli family, and the Yingtai family. Looks like the 5 hidden families of inheritance are all here today. Seeing the 21 experts emerging from the void, a mocking voice came from the Guardian family that was forcefully suppressing its anger. Facing the 5 hidden families of inheritance that had been exposed in the void, not to mention the experts of the Guardian family. Even Thaling, who was hundreds of miles away from the Huayu Mountain, was extremely angry. The fact that Yu Haoran said it on a whim showed that he had already realized this beforehand. But what about himself? Not only was he unable to use his cultivation and divine thought, which were far superior to Yu Haoran's, to discover the spying enemies in advance, but he also did not clearly realize this beforehand. This was not only his dereliction of duty, but also his hard-earned prestige in Yu Haoran's eyes. How could he not be filled with hatred for the 5 hidden families of inheritance? Although the 5 hidden families of inheritance that had been hiding in the void had all shown up, the nether soul beast's evil eyes were still staring at the void, and the scarlet color in its eyes had been replaced by anger. Its speed was infinitely close to teleportation, allowing it to directly cross the barrier of time and space and instantly appear in the void where it was staring. Then, its body directly merged into the void. In less than a second, a dry piece of human skin floated out of the void and then slowly floated down. Chapter 1749. At the edge of the Huayu mountain range, Ji Xiaolong, the most powerful man from the White Tiger clan, clenched his fists and gritted his teeth as he looked at the white-haired old man in a white robe among the 35 people floating in the air. Yushu Temple. Perhaps it was because their cultivation and strength were too low, or perhaps it was because they were protected by Dongfang Huayan. Dongfang Zhixiang, who had been ignored by the crowd and the Nether Soul Beast, saw the 35 experts forced out by the Nether Soul Beast. At the same time, his eyes burned with boundless fury as he gnashed his teeth and muttered to himself. If the earthly venerable of the Yushu Temple had not threatened Dongfang Huayan with her children, she would not have offended Yu Haoran for no reason. If he hadn't offended Yu Haoran, then with the special relationship between the two of them and their sincere cooperation, things wouldn't have become as bad as it was now. Moreover, with Yu Haoran's cautious character, omniscient means, and endless trump cards, she would not have dragged herself into a difficult situation. All of this was because of the earthly venerable and the damned Yushu Temple. Seeing the underworld spirit beast slowly emerging from the human skin, Ji Xiaolong immediately took out a tower-shaped magic weapon and looked at the underworld spirit beast with fear and nervousness. The underworld spirit beast, who had returned to the edge of the mountain range, looked at Ji Xiaolong with disdain and then looked at the distant void with a cold gaze. With the bloody lesson of the Jade Void Palace, those demigod elite warriors of the inheritance families who continued to hide in the void, and those freelance martial artists whose names shook the Tianxian land, all appeared in the void obediently and exposed themselves to everyone's eyes. Looking at the 200 Emperor Wu and the demigods standing in the void above the Huayu mountain range, Thaling could not help but frown. If the 5 hidden families of inheritance were unable to detect him in advance due to their special secret techniques and celestial devices, then how did the top experts of the ordinary families of inheritance and individual cultivators escape the detection of his third tribulation demigod divine thought? Thinking of this, Thowling looked at the underworld spirit beast floating in the air, and a look of determination flashed in his eyes. He immediately activated the 26 chaotic marks of Victor and used them to increase his third tribulation demigod divine thought. He took the risk to check the 5 elements formation again. Perhaps it was because the divine sense of the chaotic imprint was too powerful, or perhaps it was because the Nethersal beast's attention was focused on the void expert. But the divine sense of the pagoda spirit successfully avoided the Nethersal beast and merged into the 5 elements and 5 elements formation. Then it began to carefully investigate, relying on his strong cultivation of formations and the fact that a quarter of the formation had been broken by Dongfang Huaiyun. Thowling soon discovered the abnormality of the 5 elements formation and finally figured out why he could not detect the experts hiding in the void. Amazing! Thowling, who quickly withdrew his divine thought, praised Zhun Yuanzi's method of setting up the formation from the bottom of his heart. Thowling, what's so amazing about it? While Thowling was praising, Yu Haoran had also finished the process of breaking through. He could not help but ask as he consolidated his realm. Without answering Yu Haoran's question for the time being, Thowling asked in anticipation, Yu Haoran, how's your harvest? My state of mind cultivation, physical grade, Yuan Li, and soul power have all reached the peak of the 9th level of Emperor Wu. With the help of the celestial slashing sword and the celestial trapping sword, I should be able to exert the strength of a second tribulation demigod divine thought. After a little estimation, Yu Haoran replied with some depression and helplessness. Unfortunately, my own potential has reached the limit, and I can't continue to improve my accumulation for the time being. Next, if there is no opportunity to improve my potential, I can only break through my cultivation to reach the 10th level of Emperor Wu's complete 10th level. With the cultivation of a 10th level martial venerable, Emperor Wu possessed the state of mind cultivation, physical grade, Yuan Li, and soul power of second tribulation demigod divine thought. Yu Haoran's achievements at this stage could be said to be unprecedented, and it was possible that no one would be able to surpass them in the future. Such amazing achievements still could not satisfy his ambition. Thowling did not know what to say except to shake his head and smile bitterly. By the way, Thowling, what did you just say was amazing? Depression and helplessness were just temporary sighs. Yu Haoran was not dissatisfied with his own achievements, so his emotions quickly returned to normal, and his attention immediately returned to the original question. The amazing I just said was referring to the formation that Zhen Yuanzi used to guard his tomb. Thowling, who also stopped sighing in his heart, began to explain in detail the reason why he did not discover those experts hidden in the void beforehand. It turned out that Zhen Yuanzi had integrated part of the essence of the sky-covering formation and several treasures that contained the aura of the law of void into the formation of 5 elements and 5 elements that he had created. This caused the entire Huayu mountain range to seem to be erected in front of them, but in fact, it was in a different spatial fault from the Tianxin continent. This was also why Thowling and the 4 strongest experts of the Guardian families could not detect those experts hidden in the void with their divine thoughts. Thowling, I have a certain understanding of the formation doctrine and formation. I'm afraid that the ability of the formation god could not integrate the essence of the supreme formation into the formation doctrine at the peak of the divine level. After hearing Thowling's explanation, Yu Haoran suddenly had doubts about Zhen Yuanzi's real formation doctrine. In fact, not only the formation doctrine, but also the talisman doctrine, formula doctrine, and incantation doctrine, Zhen Yuanzi may have reached a higher realm. In the face of Yu Haoran's doubts, Thowling expressed his inner judgment and reminded him with a solemn expression. Yu Haoran, what I'm really worried about now is not the real realm of Zhen Yuanzi's auxiliary cultivation doctrine, but whether his own cultivation of martial arts has reached the supreme master realm. If Xinyuanzi had already reached the Supreme Master Realm, he would not have been buried in the destruction of the Middle Ages. The tomb in the Huayu mountain range was a trap. Then, why did he do this? What did he want from it? The information revealed by Thaling just now involved too much content and questions that were too profound and complicated. For a moment, Yu Haoran did not know whether he should figure out why the destruction of the Middle Ages could not kill the Supreme Masters or consider the authenticity of the tomb in the Huayu mountain range. Quack! Chapter 1750. At the edge of the Huayu mountain range. Oh no! Thaling's divine thought, which assisted Victor's origin energy, quickly scanned the Huayu mountain range. After realizing that something was wrong, he immediately ordered Yu Haoran. Yu Haoran, leave this place through the means of tearing the void immediately. After hearing Thaling's sudden reminder, Yu Haoran did not hesitate to stop his cultivation and asked instinctively while tearing the void. Thaling, what happened in the Huayu mountain range? Dongfang Huayun used the 9 styles of reversal to break 1/3 of the 5 elements and 5 elements formation. At the same time, he also completely released a large number of underworld beasts trapped in the formation. Thaling quickly explained with a solemn expression. Underworld beasts can not only ignore any level of attack and defense, but also devour the flesh and divine soul of living creatures in an instant. They are also one of the main culprits that caused the destruction of the Middle Ages. A large number of underworld beasts, one of the main culprits that caused the destruction of the Middle Ages. After hearing Thaling's explanation of what happened in the Huayu mountain range, Yu Haoran wanted a peek at the Huayu mountain range when he stepped into the void crack. He could not help but use his divine thought to scan the Huayu mountain range. Then, he could not help but be stunned for a moment with a strange expression on his face. Thaling, these things are called underworld beasts? Are you sure they're one of the main culprits that caused the destruction of the Middle Ages? Yu Haoran, when the Middle Ages were destroyed, I personally dealt with the underworld beasts. My divine soul was almost devoured by them, so I could be 100% sure of their origin. Seeing that Yu Haoran had retracted his left foot from the spatial crack, it was obvious that he did not intend to leave immediately. The tower's spirit immediately promised anxiously. Thaling, don't worry, listen to my explanation slowly. Feeling Thaling's anxiety, Yu Haoran waved his hand to disperse the void crack and explained in a relaxed tone. In my previous life, when the void spirit mouse and I were hiding from the powerhouses of the Yushu temple, we accidentally entered a cave that was left behind in an unknown period. In the cave, other than countless human skins, there were thousands of these ugly things. Yu Haoran, how did you and the void spirit mouse deal with the underworld beasts? Underworld beasts not only could not ignore any level of attack and defense, they had a speed that was close to teleportation, which was also an important means that countless living creatures could not avoid. In his previous life, he had not only was he in his previous world realm, he had not had the strength and speed. He could only mean he had had a secret method or a special weapon. Or a special equipment. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to enter the demon god's ancient tomb alive and obtain the opportunity to reincarnate. Therefore, Thaling could not help but ask excitedly. Yu Haoran shrugged and replied in confusion. There's no need to do anything at all. They just lay there obediently, and then they were all eaten by the empty spirit mouse. However, when he used his divine sense to see more than 100 underworld beasts charging out of the white fog and madly slaughtering Emperor Wu and the powerhouses of the demigod realm, he could not help but gasp. In his previous life, when he and the ethereal spirit mouse broke into that broken cave, the thousands of ugly monsters were like snakes seeing a dragon or mice seeing a cat when they saw the ethereal spirit mouse. They were so scared that they trembled and didn't move at all, allowing the ethereal spirit mouse to eat them one by one. At the same time, the void spirit mouse had relied on eating thousands of ugly monsters to advance from the beginning of the 6th stage, 7th stage king realm to the 5th stage, 1st stage emperor realm. After hearing Yu Haoran's reply, Thaling was completely stunned. He was completely dumbfounded. The underworld beasts that even supreme beings of the supremacy realm found difficult to deal with were eaten by the void spirit mouse without any resistance. If the countless powerhouses of the Middle Ages who had died under the attacks of the underworld beasts knew about this, would they be depressed and come back to life, only to die again? Fortunately, as an existence at the peak of the supreme being realm, the pagoda spirit's mental fortitude was very strong after countless years of tempering. It quickly recovered from its shock and depression and immediately ordered Yu Haoran. Yu Haoran, immediately send the first clone to inform the void spirit mouse and ask it to hurry over. Got it. After nodding in response, Yu Haoran immediately used telepathy to contact his first doppelganger, and then had his first doppelganger inform the void spirit mouse. Taking advantage of the battle between the heaven-punishing Devil Emperor and the powerhouses of the Guardian families in Whitebone City, the Void Spirit Mouse took the opportunity to advance to the first stage Sage Realm. Suddenly, it had a very close connection with the life and death soul fixing fruit. As long as it stayed next to the life and death soul fixing fruit, its speed of advancement was very fast. In just over 4 months, it was already at the peak of the 9th stage Sage Realm. Compared to his previous life, where it took several years to barely advance a small realm, it could be described as advancing by leaps and bounds. This was also the important reason why he didn't bring the Void Spirit Mouse with him. Not long after, the first clone used the method of telepathy to send a message saying that the Void Spirit Mouse had reached the critical moment of advancing to the Supremacy Realm. It was temporarily inconvenient to leave the life and death soul fixing fruit for too long. In his previous life, they had depended on each other for decades. How could he not know that the Void Spirit Mouse was in a bad mood with him? It must be complaining about his recent actions. He didn't inform it, nor did he take the initiative to invite it. According to the experience of his previous life, if he wanted to eliminate its unpleasant mood, he would have to take the initiative to apologize to it, or use a large amount of waste pills to tempt it. However, the underworld spirit beast was more delicious than the waste pills, so Yu Haoran smiled and ordered the first clone. Brother Hao, please tell the Void Spirit Mouse that there are delicious meat eggs in the Huayu mountain range. It doesn't care if it comes or not. Brother Yu, the Void Spirit Mouse is already on its way. Only 3 seconds later, the first clone sent the good news. After cutting off the connection with the first clone, Yu Haoran reminded Thaling. Thaling, the Void Spirit Mouse will be here in at most 1 minute. 1 minute. Seeing the underworld spirit beast crazily slaughtering the hundreds of Emperor Wu and demigod experts gathered in front of the mountain range, Thaling suddenly felt that 1 minute was too long. In this regard, Yu Haoran just curled his lips and didn't say anything. In fact, even if the Void Spirit Mouse was by his side at this moment, he definitely wouldn't let the Void Spirit Mouse attack the underworld spirit beast immediately. It wasn't that he was too cold-blooded, but that he was very selfish, because he wanted to use this opportunity to weaken the strength of the 4 Guardian families and the Lan family, and prepare in advance for the bloody war that might break out in the future. 1 minute was very short, which was the time it took to blink a dozen times. Chapter 1751. At the edge of the Huayu mountain range, Dongfang Zhixiang's expression changed when he saw the underworld spirit beasts charging out of the white fog. He immediately appeared on top of the white rock. Then, he stood behind his daughter and took out his ultimate emperor attack and defense weapons. He was on guard against the underworld spirit beasts that could attack at any time. At the same time, he anxiously pleaded with Dongfang Huayun. Yin I'm begging you. Don't use the reverse 9 styles unsealing technique. Dongfang Huayun's face was as pale as a sheet. When she heard her father's pleading, a trace of hesitation flashed across her eyes, especially when he saw over a dozen Nether Soul beasts working together to break through the defenses of the formation, causing the experts of the Protector clans to be devoured by the Nether Soul beasts. His hesitation was gradually replaced by regret, and his hand gestures gradually slowed down. However, when her regretful eyes uncontrollably shone with a trace of green light, and the green light became denser and denser. Her face immediately revealed a ferocious madness. Then, a dark red pill that emitted a rich aroma suddenly appeared in her hand. Without any hesitation, Dongfang Huayun directly put the pill in her mouth. However, just as the pill was about to reach her mouth, a large hand suddenly reached out and tightly grasped her arm that was holding the pill and asked in a stern voice, "Yin'er, what are you trying to do? Let go." Dongfang Huayun ordered in a low voice as she glared fiercely at Dongfang Zhixiang. You're not my daughter. Who are you?" The coldness in her sharp eyes and the gloomy aura emitted from her body made Dongfang Zhixiang, who was her biological father, immediately realize the real reason for his daughter's change. Therefore, he continued to hold Dongfang Huayun's arm tightly as he angrily asked, "If you don't want to die, let go immediately." Ignoring Dongfang Zhixiang's question, Dongfang Huayun's cold eyes were replaced by murderous intent as she threatened in a low voice, "I don't care who you are. Get out of my daughter's consciousness right now. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless." Dongfang Huayun's roaring threat made Dongfang Zhixiang very certain that his daughter had been controlled by an even more powerful spirit. Dongfang Zhixiang's eyes were filled with murderous intent as he thought about how his daughter had completely severed ties with Yu Haoran and how her rash actions had offended all the top forces in the profound sky continent. "Reckless fool, I'll send you to hell right now." Dongfang Zhixiang's threat completely enraged the divine soul in Dongfang Huayun's sea of consciousness. While she was furiously judging Dongfang Zhixiang's fate, a terrifying aura of a third tribulation demigod quickly rose from her body. "If you dare to harm Dongfang family head in the slightest, believe it or not, I'll extract your divine soul and throw it into the heart flame soul refining formation. I'll let your martial God divine soul experience the wonderful process of going from heaven to earth and from earth to hell." Just as she was controlling Dongfang Huayun's divine soul and planning to kill Dongfang Zhixiang, Yu Haoran's threatening voice suddenly came from the scene. At the same time, following Yu Haoran's threatening voice, those nether souls and Een demons that were normally crazily slaughtering seemed to have met their natural enemy as they trembled and crawled on the ground. "Go!" Yu Haoran ordered with a smile as he looked at the void spirit mouse that was already drooling on his shoulder. Then, under the incredulous gazes of the remaining 40 demigod experts, the void spirit mouse began to devour the nether souls and Een beasts one by one. This seems to be the legendary connate spiritual beast, the void spirit mouse, that can find all the rare treasures in the world. Looking at the white mouse that was happily devouring the nether souls and Een beasts, one of the remaining 3 demigod experts of the Zhongli clan, a silver-haired old man, guessed with a shocked expression. The speculation of the silver-haired old man from the Zhongli clan also caused the remaining 4 strongest people from the Guardian clans, as well as the remaining 7 demigods from the Shangwan clan and the Lan clan, to reveal naked greed in their eyes. Ignoring the void spirit mouse that was devouring the nether souls and Een beasts, as well as the demigod experts that revealed greed in their eyes, Yu Haoran indifferently walked towards the white rock step by step. Seeing Yu Haoran walking towards him, Dongfang Huayun immediately became nervous. At the same time, a trace of clarity gradually returned to his eyes that had been replaced by the green light. However, the clarity only appeared for less than 2 seconds before it was covered by the dense green light again. "I'll give you 3 seconds to get out of Yun Er's sea of consciousness immediately." Standing 3 meters away from the white rock, Yu Haoran stretched out 3 fingers and ordered, "I, Dongfang Alan, entered the Tao through the formation. I once used the unique 8 forbidden soul seizing formation to kill 118 experts at the peak of the 9th level of the martial god realm. Even the supreme existence of the supreme realm doesn't dare to threaten and order me to my face." Faced with Yu Haoran's order to leave the sea of consciousness in 3 seconds, the divine soul that controlled Dongfang Huayun's body looked up and down and sneered with an incomparably arrogant expression. Who do you think you are? What qualifications and ability do you have to threaten me? When he heard the self-introduction of the divine soul that controlled his daughter's body, Dongfang Zhixiang's body trembled slightly. He suddenly let go of his daughter's arm, took 2 steps back, and pointed at Dongfang Huayun. His eyes were full of shock as he cried out involuntarily. You're the fairy in the clouds who was known as the soul-sucking hand in the Middle Ages. Ancestor Lan of my Dongfang family, who is most likely to advance to the supreme realm through formation. After hearing Dongfang Zhixiang's cry, Dongfang Yilan's eyes flashed with a trace of complacency. The slightly raised corner of her mouth made her look even more like an arrogant princess. 3. Yu Haoran was not affected by Dongfang Zhixiang's cry at all. He withdrew 1 finger and entered the countdown with an indifferent expression. Coldly looking at Yu Haoran, Dongfang Yilan also did not mean to leave Dongfang Huayun's sea of consciousness. 2. Withdrawing the 2nd finger, Yu Haoran's expression was still indifferent as he counted down. 1. After withdrawing the last finger, Yu Haoran turned his head and ordered the empty spirit mouse that was swallowing the underworld soul beast. Little spirit, immediately control a underworld soul beast for me and let it swallow the divine soul of that bitch in Yun-Er's sea of consciousness. Got it. After turning its head and responding, the empty spirit mouse's small eyes immediately stared at an underworld soul beast that was trembling and ordered. Swallow the divine soul in that woman's sea of consciousness, and I won't eat you. Chapter 1752. At the edge of the Huayu mountain range, when a void spirit mouse hurried over and revealed that it could not only restrain and devour the nether beasts, but also control their minds, Yu Haoran already had the idea of using the nether beasts to intimidate the remaining experts of the guardian families and the inherited families. After all, not only were most of the remaining experts at the 3rd tribulation demigod realm, but every one of them also possessed special secret techniques and artifacts. Otherwise, they would not have been able to hold on until now under the pursuit of the nether beasts. Therefore, when he saw that Dongfang Huayun, whose temperament had changed, was actually controlled by the ancestor's remnant soul, he not only wanted to use the nether beast to rescue Dongfang Huayun, but also planned to use the method of killing the chicken to warn the monkey, to completely intimidate everyone present, so that it would be easier for him to seize the treasure. When she saw that the nether beasts, under the command of the white mouse, actually stood up trembling and accelerated towards her, Dongfang Yilan's eyes revealed a look of fear. As the top expert of formations in the Middle Ages, not only did she personally experience the destruction of the Middle Ages, but she also personally dealt with the nether beasts. Regarding the brutality and strength of the nether beasts, she did not know less than those experts who died tragically at the hands of the nether beasts. But as an expert at the peak of the martial god realm in the Middle Ages, who had experienced countless life and death situations, her strong state of mind cultivation allowed her to quickly calm down, and her rich battle experience allowed her to immediately think of a solution. Quickly raising her left hand to press on her forehead, Dongfang Yilan's expression was fierce as she threatened. Boy, immediately make the nether beast stop, otherwise I will immediately destroy Dongfang Huayun's divine soul. Hearing that Dongfang Yilan actually used his own daughter and her descendants' life to threaten Yu Haoran, Dongfang Zhixiang's eyes flashed with a trace of terrifying cold light. Then, while Dongfang Yilan's attention was on Yu Haoran and the nether beasts, he quietly took out a simple and unadorned talisman, and then slowly approached Dongfang Yilan. In the face of Dongfang Yilan's threatening means, Yu Haoran could not help but change his expression, and a trace of panic flashed in his eyes. Of course, with his rich battle experience, how could he not have thought of this in advance? The change and panic just now was just a disguise, just used to confuse Dongfang Yilan so that she could completely let her guard down. After all, the nether beast's speed was not as fast as the remnant soul in Dongfang Huayun's sea of consciousness. Only when Dongfang Ilan's remnant soul completely let down her vigilance, then the second underworld spirit-ean beast that was hiding in the dark in advance would have a chance to sneak attack. Soon, you used Dongfang Ilan's the beasts. When the pagoda spirit revealed that the talisman Dongfang Zhixiang had just taken out was the best soul-sealing talisman that could seal the soul of a martial god expert, he knew what the other party was planning. Kid, you are still too inexperienced to fight with me, the fairy in the clouds. Seeing the panic in Yu Haoran's eyes, Dongfang Ilan suddenly showed off wildly and proudly. But at this time, Dongfang Zhixiang suddenly reached out his left hand that was holding the talisman and quickly stuck the spirit-sealing talisman on her temple, causing her to stop boasting. Do it! Yu Haoran immediately ordered Dongfang Ilan's soul beast when Dongfang Zhixiang used the soul beast to seal Dongfang Ilan's soul beasts. Squeak! Following the squeak of the void spirit mouse, the nether beast that had been hiding under the white rock instantly appeared under Dongfang Ilan's feet and then directly merged into her body. In just 2 seconds, a nether beast with a terrifying aura came out of Dongfang Huayun's body. Squeak! Just as the nether beast that had used the remnant soul of the martial god realm to achieve a rapid advancement in rank and was ready to show off, the squeak of the void spirit mouse made it immediately withdraw its terrifying aura, and at the same time, crawled on the white rock, trembling. Get down! When Yu Haoran thought about how he was forced to take a few steps back by the terrifying aura, he appeared on the white rock in a flash. His expression was rather displeased as he scolded the nether soul beast that was crawling on the rock. Perhaps because Yu Haoran had the aura of the void spirit mouse, the nether beasts immediately obediently rolled down the rock when they heard his scolding. This also made the 4 most powerful people of the guardian families change their expressions. Taking off the soul beasts that were stuck on Dongfang Huayun's temple, he directly reached out and pressed it on her forehead, and then transferred his divine thought into her sea of consciousness. Yu Shixiang, I'm sorry. Just as Yu Haoran's divine thought entered the sea of consciousness and condensed into a body, Dongfang Huayun's apologetic voice immediately came to his ears. Silly girl, why didn't you tell me the situation of my body when my own consciousness could control the body? Looking at Dongfang Huayun, who used her consciousness to create a body, and looking at her ashamed face, Yu Haoran felt angry and somewhat distressed as he reprimanded her. Facing Yu Haoran's reprimand, Dongfang Huayun's eyes flashed a trace of self-blame at the same time. She lowered her head and didn't know what to say. No matter how powerful the strength of Dongfang Ilan's remnant soul was, as an array master in the realm of Array Emperor, it was impossible for the other party to enter her sea of consciousness without her permission. But the fact was, the other party not only successfully entered the sea of consciousness, but also caused a great disaster, and even almost caused her to die. The reason was because of her selfishness. Because she wanted to use Dongfang Ilan, an ancestor who was infinitely close to the supreme realm of Array Emperor, to make her array realm and strength far surpass Yu Haoran, and then take revenge on him for leaving without saying goodbye when she broke through the realm of Array Emperor in front of everyone. Although Dongfang Huayun didn't explain why she was controlled by the ancestor's remnant soul, with the experienced Thaling beside him, he basically already knew the reason why the other party did so. In this regard, Yu Haoran, who knew that he was in the wrong, really didn't know what to say. He could only sigh and command. Yin'er, after the consciousness returns to the body, you don't have to say anything, and you don't have to do anything. Let me deal with all the troubles. Yu Shixiang, thinking that because of her and the ancestor's remnant soul's madness, the 4 guardian families, the 5 hidden inheritance families, and the Yushu temple suffered heavy losses. Thinking that Yu Haoran would have to face the reprimand of more than 10 experts of the top forces at the same time, Dongfang Huayun felt extremely guilty and wanted to say something, but Yu Haoran shook his head and stopped him. Then, after the divine thought left Dongfang Huayun's sea of consciousness and withdrew the palm on her forehead, Yu Haoran nodded to Dongfang Zhixiang. Patriarch, don't worry, Yin'er is fine. Chapter 1753. At the edge of the Huayu Mountains. The four strongest people from the Protector clans immediately became nervous when they saw Yu Haoran walk over. In particular, the strongest people from the Blue Dragon and White Tiger clans who had grievances with him subconsciously tightened their grip on their personal ritual artifacts. Yu Haoran's gaze shifted from them to the remaining three experts of the Zhongli clan, the one remaining expert of the Yingtai clan, the two remaining experts of the Kong clan, the four remaining experts of the Shangwan clan, the two remaining experts of the Lan clan, the five remaining experts of the Hollow Jade Palace, and the 16 remaining experts of the Zhongli clan, the one remaining expert of the Yingtai clan, the two remaining experts of the Yingtai clan, the two remaining experts of the Kong clan, the four remaining experts of the Shangwan clan, the two remaining experts of the Lan clan, the five remaining experts of the Hollow Jade Palace, and the 16 remaining experts. Yu Haoran spoke indifferently after looking around at everyone present and resting his gaze on the four experts from the Protector clans once again. I don't care how heavy your losses are this time, nor do I care how intense your resentment is. You brought all of this upon yourselves. If you made trouble for Dongfang Huaiyun or the Dongfang clan because of your resentment afterwards, then you'll be making trouble for me, Yu Haoran. Yu Haoran waved his hand at the nearby Void Spirit Mouse when he reached there. Squeak, squeak. The Void Spirit Mouse squeaked at the remaining 12 Undersoul beasts before taking them to Yu Haoran's side. Seniors present, you should have more or less heard of my character, Yu Haoran. I don't want to bring the Undersoul beasts to your clans and sects in the future. Many experts present admired Yu Haoran's willingness to protect Dongfang Huaiyun and the Dongfang clan, but they were rather dissatisfied with his method of using the Undersoul beasts to threaten them. This was especially true for the arrogant Lan clan and Shangwan clan. His method of threatening them was a form of showing off, a provocation that was overly arrogant and ignorant. Thus, from the Shangwan clan that only had 4 people left, a young man of about 20 years of age spoke with an expression of boundless arrogance. Yu Haoran, whether it's the 4 great guardian families or our 5 great hidden families, we are all powerful families that have survived the destruction of the Middle Ages and recent ages. Although the Nether Spirit Beast devouring method is very powerful, it's not like we don't have methods to counter it. Therefore, you don't have the right to represent the Dongfang family, nor do you have the ability to threaten us. Yu Haoran's indifferent eyes flashed with a cold light as he looked at the young man who just refuted him. Don't tell me that I really don't have the qualifications and ability to bear Yun Er's sins. Yu Haoran, what are you trying to do? The change in Yu Haoran's gaze caused the Shangwan clan youth's expression to change as he took 2 steps back. I want to prove that I have the qualifications to represent Dongfang Huaiyun, that I have the ability to protect the Dongfang family, and that I can bear all of the sins that Dongfang Huaiyun has committed. As the sound of his reply faded, Yu Haoran stretched out his hand and pointed at the Shangwan clan youth as he instructed with an indifferent expression. Destroy him. Zhi. After receiving Yu Haoran's instructions, the Void Spirit Mouse immediately squeaked and ordered one of the Nether Spirit Beasts to prepare to attack. Formation Emperor Yu Sun is not only the most talented and strongest member of our Shangwan clan's younger generation, but he is also the only son of the clan leader and the only successor of the family. I hope you can reconsider. Seeing Yu Haoran directly attacking without saying a word, a white-haired elder for the Shangwan clan threatened him with an indifferent expression. Attack! If he wanted to let everyone know his determination to protect Dongfang Huaiyun and the Dongfang family, he had to do something that was sufficiently shocking. The only son of the Shangwan clan's clan leader and the only successor of the Shangwan family was just right. Therefore, Yu Haoran ignored the Shangwan clan's white-haired elder's threat and directly ordered the Void Spirit Mouse to kill. Zhi. Since Yu Haoran had flatly refused the other party's request, it meant that it was impossible to take his life. Therefore, the Void Spirit Mouse immediately notified the Nether Spirit Beast to attack. With a speed that was infinitely close to teleportation, the Nether Spirit Beasts instantly appeared in front of the Shangwan clan youth. The youth waved his natal magic artifact to slow down the nether spirit beast's attack, while he pleaded with the other 3 experts of his clan for help. Third grandfather, 2 uncles, quickly save me. In the face of the clan leader's only son's plea for help, although the white-haired elder and the other 2 experts wanted to help, when they thought of the nether spirit beast's ability to devour flesh and souls, the fear and selfishness of having the upper hand made them ultimately choose to stand by and watch. The 3 experts' actions of standing by and watching made Yu Haoran even more aware of the Shangwan clan's character. At the same time, he was even more unafraid of their revenge. The nether spirit beast that could ignore any attack or defense directly passed through the opponent's attack and quickly merged into the opponent's body before taking away their flesh and souls. When the nether spirit beast finished dealing with the Shangwan clan youth and returned behind the void spirit mouse, Yu Haoran looked at everyone present and asked with an indifferent expression, "Seniors, I wonder if this junior has the qualifications and ability to represent the Dongfang clan?" After everyone present glanced at each other, the strongest expert of the Black Tortoise clan finally stepped forward and replied, "Formation Emperor Yu, you have the qualifications and ability to represent the Dongfang clan." Nodding to the Black Tortoise clan's formation experts, Yu Haoran indifferently reminded them, "Since it's like this, I hope the seniors can remember this junior's reminder." Immediately after, a gentle smile instantly replaced the indifference. Yu Haoran stepped forward in front of the 3 experts of the Zhongli clan, then cupped his hands and bowed. Junior Yu Haoran greets the 3 seniors. Although the 3 experts of the Zhongli clan were very puzzled by Yu Haoran's sudden change in attitude, when they thought about how Yu Haoran now had the terrifying means to determine their life and death, they didn't dare to be negligent in the slightest and return the greeting. Zhongli Shui Zhe, Zhongli Wu Fu, Zhongli Weiyang greets Formation Emperor Yu. Senior Shui Zhe, what is your relationship with Miss Shui Qin? After hearing how the 3 experts of a Zhongli clan addressed him, a strange thought suddenly flashed through Yu Haoran's mind. He hurriedly asked the middle-aged expert who called himself Zhongli Shui Zhe. "That's my sister." Zhongli Shui Zhe frowned slightly and replied, "Senior Shui Zhe, this junior and Miss Shui Qin can be said to be very close friends. Since you're her brother, then you're also my senior." Although Zhongli Shui Qin had never talked about her family situation, she once inadvertently mentioned to Wu Jingjun that she had a half-brother. Therefore, after learning the true identity of Zhongli Shui Zhe, Yu Haoran was pleasantly surprised and immediately planned to have a good relationship with him. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.